was trying to unit.
Good evening, everyone. I'm getting some backstage tutoring on how this fancy streaming software works. Thank you, Charlie, Bob, and Todd was just along for the ride.
Yeah, now I know.
It was overload.
It was overload.
Education overload.
It's kind of that teaching old dogs new tricks kind of thing.
Well, it helps when you're on time. Just pick it.
How are you doing, Brad?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Pretty good.
I'm still trying to get my screen back to. Oh, there we go. Okay. Now I can see everybody commenting.
Yeah, there's quite a bit in here. You got 22 already. I'm going to go ahead and share this on my channel as well.
Oh, thanks, buddy.
And see if we can boost the numbers here.
How do you do that?
Sorry, Charlie. I was getting instructions from multiple places and I didn't know what to do.
That's all right. That's fine. We'll get you hooked up.
So if you want to share this out to your beekeeping community, you go to the YouTube tab and hit the share button on the bottom. You click that and hit create a post, and it'll put a link on your YouTube channel to send people over here. So there you go.
Create a post. Look at that.
Look at that. Ian's got the evening already.
Rained out. That's good and bad.
The everyone is frozen on my screen. That's a you problem. Nature's Sweet Bees. Well, we are in Canada, so that could be why we're frozen as well.
Yeah, it's going by satellite because we're in Canada.
I was just making a cold reference.
I think I shared that. What's the topic for tonight? I thought maybe we'd talk bees, for example, maybe. What do you think? Should we talk bees tonight?
It's a bee chat?
Talk bees and beekeeping, perhaps.
Yeah, sounds like a plan.
And I was thinking about this when we decided, when I decided to do this tonight. I was thinking, yeah, what's really the topic? And to me, right now, my mind is drifting toward reviewing my season. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? What problems do I need to, continue to overcome, or what problems did I overcome and was successful or unsuccessful? Just review that and kind of make some plans for next season. There's always next year, right? That's a farmer's mantra.
It's my football.
It's always next year.
Too.
Yeah. And so I think we should maybe just kind of make that the kind of the topic, and I'll start. I had, as many of you know, I had kind of a rocky start this season. Nosema kind of really took over my apiary, and by the time my colonies kind of stopped dying, I ended up with about a 75% loss this year. And it was kind of disheartening to go into winter with 150 colonies, and by the time the dust settled in May, I had about 40 that I could kind of call something. The zombie hive corner was nice and full as a result, so that was kind of nice. I used that very well, and if anybody's not that familiar with the term zombie hive, that was Philip Morris. He came up with that term, and I think it's very appropriate because it is kind of just The Walking Dead. What that was any colonies that weren't getting it, that weren't turning into something that I would call a honey production hive for whatever reason. I would just put in a nuke box, carry it over to the corner of the yard, and set it up on a stand there. And mind you, many of those didn't make it either. They just dwindled and died. but a number of them did, quite a number of them, probably about 20 or more. And some of them performed very, very well. And that corner full of those zombie nukes provided all of the resource for my cell builder, for my queen rearing project, provided all of the brood and bees for in excess of 100 mating nukes for the season. And so those, zombie queens, those queens that would otherwise perhaps had been pinched off or discarded in some way, they just wouldn't stop giving. They just kept giving, and it was really great. So, what would I do different? It seems though I need to take Nosema a little more seriously. Testing, sampling testing, and treating fumagillin perhaps. There's a product called Nosavit that I actually started trying just this month. We'll see in the spring how I think that worked out. And just other things, learning about it, learning that thymol actually has is said to have a positive effect on getting rid of nosema. So that I learned. My queen rearing went well. It did start off a little slow. I got some help from James McNally, who came for a visit, and he helped me kind of fine tune things. Wasn't doing anything dramatically wrong, but just a few things to change, and things started going a lot better. What I would do differently from there, I would graft later. I think it was the 17th. The 17th of July was the last graft, and I think I should have grafted for another week or two, so that I had some queens for some of those August broodless splits that we hear so much about. I know Bill the Bee-Man's done those, and Ian was doing some of those too. So I really wish I would have had the queens to do some of those. So that's something I'd change. So you're probably tired of hearing me hammer on.
Bob, are you administrator?
Yes.
Pop up Russell Koopmans. Here's a question for Brad there.
Oh, hold on one second. So
yeah, if you wouldn't mind, Bob,
I'll
pop those questions up as they come up.
Brad, do you think that getting a lot of new comb in the hives will help? Yeah,
certainly didn't hurt. And that's another thing I did. I kind of forgot to mention that I culled about 400 frames out of my operation and melted them down in my melter. And it took a long time, and it was a really disgusting job.
You culled my whole yard.
And I replaced. Yeah. Well, it was pretty well 5 frames from every colony I had. Right, is what it amounted to. So I pulled half of the frames out, and I put in fresh drawn honeycomb in the vast majority of them. So it was nice, fresh, clean comb from last season, of course. And the result of that, I could see the bees, those colonies just looked so healthy. And when they started laying into that fresh comb, I don't think there's anything more beautiful than a nice pattern on a freshly drawn frame. So I think that did help. Now, I don't have a double blind to tell me, yeah, this is exactly, but keeping things fresh, I think it's a really good idea. And
so
I try to do that more.
My question with Nosema is, I know it's a gut bacteria, but does old comb have something to do with that? I guess is, in your opinion.
Nosema can live for a long time. That's one thing I learned. It can live for a long time, and it can live. I'm trying to remember now. I should have maybe dug out the publication. It doesn't tolerate heat very well. I think it was, if you stored comb for a few days at 30C, the nosema would die. I could have just done that. I run my honey house at 30C, so I can easily get that building to 30. Put all my frames in there and turn the heat up for a week. But I just wanted to get everything refreshed. I was just in the mood. And yeah, Mike asked what type. It was 100% Nosema cerana. I did have every sample. Did I take 10? I think I took 10 samples. And it cost me a lot of money. It cost me over $600. And I had identification done on every sample. And every sample came out Nosema cerana 100%, 0 Nosema apis, which I kind of expected because that's what I'd been told. And the levels were unbelievably high. Like, I'm talking 50 million spores. Treatment or threshold is 1 million. So it was ridiculously high.
The one thing I noticed, we're so used to doing these on our channels that your viewers may not even know who the heck we are. So I notice a lot of people that in the chat that have names that I recognize, and then I see a bunch that don't. So before I start talking, I'm going to say
You're
Bob
right.
from Walker.
Yes. And absolutely. I'm remiss there as host. I'm not very practiced at hosting. Yeah. And
but we do it.
So we have Bob Walker Bee Ranch, and you're near Columbia,
South Carolina.
South Carolina. And I don't know if everybody's screen is formatted the same way. Todd, Loma Vista Bee Company, near Fresno, California. And
there you go.
Sawmill Charlie,
Maryland.
Close to Baltimore,
Maryland, not far from Baltimore, Maryland.
Yeah,
that's right.
So this is just a ragtag group of people that I have been hanging out with online for.
We've been defiling his psyche for the last.
When your parents say that somebody has fallen in with the wrong crowd.
We're that wrong crowd.
This is the wrong crowd. Yeah.
Anyway,
so Bob, I'm going to throw it over to you. Kind of review your season and what went right and what went wrong.
It started off much like yours did. I was lost, and I say lost, not lost from the aspect of not knowing what to do as far as beekeeping. It was more of lost on. My colonies were all at different levels and different strengths and different breeds. And you look in a box of Kearneys and it's got a cluster this big. And I look in my Italians and they're in double deeps. So I had to get my colonies to where I could quickly identify when I opened a box. Is it in good shape? Is it in bad shape? Should it have more bees? Does it have two? You know what I'm saying? Is it doing really well? Mm-hmm. I had no baseline to be able to do that. And on top of that, it didn't seem to matter how many colonies I had the year before. I was always coming out around the same number of colonies. So it was a humbling moment because for me, I felt like I get in these rabbit hole situations where I know what I'm doing. Right. And you're just chugging along, doing the same things over and over again, getting the same results over and over again. And sometimes you have to stop and say, hey, Mr. McNally, I need some help. And he's in Canada and he's like, hell, I don't know what to do in South Carolina with bees. That's basically it. His were still in the barn, right? He's still putting frames together. But it was humbling for me because I'm such a type A personality, which I'm sure nobody in the chat can gather at this point, right? That I have to step outside of my own ego or my own belief in myself and say, hey, I need you to put me in check because I trust in what you're saying, right? I see what you're doing. I need to do that. Now, what do we need to do? So for me, it was more about making a goal. And at the beginning of the year, he said, look, we've got two options. We can do this as, are you just wanting honey or are you wanting to expand? I said, well, I want to expand. He said, then I don't want to hear any more words about honey production and how much honey that you've gotten this year. You get what you get. And I said, fair enough. So at the end of the day, making more colonies, making healthy colonies, grafting new queens, that's all stuff that I kind of had to snap myself back into a routine of doing and learning. And to get my colonies to where I could look at them and be like, yeah, something's wrong with this one. I may not know what's wrong with it at that point, but I can identify immediately when you open the cover, yeah, this should be stronger or something's happening here. And then I know, okay, I need to come back and check this one. And so with that, I had 17 coming out of winter after winter losses. And for us, summer losses are worse than winter losses, but winter losses. And then got up to 70 at one point this year and sold nukes and queens and, the whole thing. And then now I'm shrinking back and I'm in the 50s right now on colonies. So, but they're doing good. It's just, it's just being able, and this wonderful thing that we have called YouTube. There's a lot of keyboard warriors out there that seem to know everything, right? No content, but know everything. So it's, for me, it's more about being able, this community. And if I pick up the phone, if Brad's available and I hit him on the phone, he's going to pick it up and say, hey, what's going on? And talk. Todd, we talked today. Charlie, we talked yesterday or today. But in the last couple of days, we've built a relationship. Just being able to call up and ask, how should I say? I guess it is biased, but kind of an unbiased opinion. You're not going to get judged on what's going on. You're going to get truthful help on, well, this is what I would do. And James would say, but I'm not saying you should do that, but this is how I normally do it, right? And you have to be smart enough not to just go blindfolded. You have to know your geographic location and whatnot. But that helped me out a lot. So, holy goodness here.
Well, thanks, Phil and Norman.
You're now a millionaire Canadian.
I'm almost
you got 20
there.
USD. 40 USD. Look at that.
Thank you. I'm speechless. Yeah. So then, how does that translate then, Bob, into next year? In a nutshell, as it were. What went right that we're going to make sure we do, and what plan do we have to mold things differently?
Well, see, now I'm not having in my mind. Now, the bees always can do their own thing, but in my mind right now, it allows me to do quicker assessments in the spring, to be able to make those splits at a reasonable time to where my bees are maximizing their size when the honey flow is starting, and also graft queens for my own splits, and helps me be more sustainable in my situation here. So, I mean, I think just getting snatched back on the track, right? And the funny thing is, James will tell you if he comes on in a little while that he didn't tell me anything I didn't already know. He just helped me stop missing some of the little things that as you get faster and faster of doing things, I think that it's our habit to say, well, why do I need that towel over my graft? That towel's not really doing anything.
Yeah,
so you just leave that to the side and start grafting and get out of there.
The same thing when he helped me with my grafting. Nothing new. Just,
you
stop
start
cutting
taking
corners
little
kind of thing.
shortcuts to try to make it a little
Yeah, yeah.
faster, and you just end up slowing yourself
Yeah.
down in the long run. So
And
I
I
think
even had Carrie here do a graph for me, and we sat in the truck and we talked about it and the whole thing, and nothing new, right? But her graph, I could tell, was better than mine. So I think the one thing is she was picking younger larvae as a rule than I was.
well, and one thing that James, I mean, I hope he comes on, because if he does, you'll probably hear it 5 times about the life cycle of the bee. That's the one thing, no matter what we do, that does not change. It's 21 days for a worker bee, it's 23 days for a drone, and it's 16 days for a queen. That doesn't change.
Yeah, I've said that to people who want, they want to start beekeeping, and a new beekeeper is something, and I'll tell them, life cycle of bee, that like your own name. If you don't know the life cycle of the bee like your own name, you better learn it, because it'll make your job so much easier, and it'll make you so much more effective as a beekeeper by knowing that. You look at a frame of brood and it tells you a story because you know that life cycle, right? And same with queens.
Well, I did a video yesterday, and they asked about the tablet, but that's not what we're talking about. In the cap brood, there was very little cap brood, so that means she stopped laying 3 weeks ago, about 21 days ago, right? It's just about to hatch out, so 3 weeks ago, and now there's eggs and larvae in there within the last few days. So she shut down for a couple weeks and then started back again. So when you know that, you can kind of understand what's happening when, anyway, in the colony.
It's interesting here in the spring throughout April. Generally, you can look into your brood nest, and I'll add that when it's time. You can look in your brood nest, and you can see the last 3 weeks of the weather that we've had in your brood nest if you look at that nest, because and here I think it's probably more pronounced than otherwise, because they're coming out of a near broodless state and wanting to build up into that. So I'm going to add one more person here, and I might have to introduce this guy, because I don't think anybody would recognize him.
Such an unknown guy.
So there's this guy that I met today, and he said,
"Is that Justin Bieber?"
Justin Bieber. Yeah, it's Justin Bieber, ladies and gentlemen. He's masquerading as Ian Stepler.
The real Justin Bieber.
Had a day off today because of the rain.
Thanks for coming in, buddy.
Yeah.
Well, it's about time.
Tim Hortons. So.
I heard about you.
So, how's everybody this evening?
I heard about you.
You heard about this guy
at Costco?
You heard about him at Costco? I heard about him at Costco too.
And they said Ian Stepler was just here in Columbia, South Carolina, and bought all the damn sugar to go to Canada. And I was like,
tough luck for them, right?
I mean, I was doing introductions, and I don't think you need an introduction, but I will anyway. Ian runs a little hobby beekeeping operation over near Miami, Manitoba. It's actually right about exactly 10 times the size of my operation, so it's kind of neat to look at the difference in scale and things. Ian and I have become friends over the last 9 years or so. I kind of covertly chose him as my mentor before he even knew it, and then I begged him to join a beekeeping association board with me, and so he did, and he's been very, very effective there, and we're blessed to have him in that role. So anyway,
I blame you for all the trouble, Brad. I'm just joking.
I know.
I'm just gonna say,
is that why you won't let me
I'm
off the board?
I just have to warn you, I'm working on a 5-second delay again. So I'll try to manage it best I
Okay.
can. I'll just kind of, pause as we go. Yeah.
Well, we'll set that up and get some feedback from you as that happens. So you can see a Canadian Beekeeper's blog, of course. You can see Ian's videos on there. I'm not going to go too much more in depth. I'm sure everybody kind of knows Ian from his online presence. So I was going to continue with that theme to Todd and Charlie, and I do want to continue with you gentlemen. However, Ian has a little bit tighter schedule tonight, I think.
We got a bigger
And
name on the other
so
line. We understand.
if I can if I can well, I want to get him on, I want to get Ian through before James comes on, because he's going to bump Ian. But no, I'm just kidding. So were you following the conversation before you came in, Ian? The kind of the theme, reviewing this season, things I did, things that I should have done or did wrong or did right, and what's the plan for next season in a nutshell?
Yeah, that's it's a good topic, especially off the coattails of this year. Oh, I was coming on here just trying to think of what I was going to say to you, but I think the one thing that I took away from my experience from this year, and I think both you and I, Brad, had much the same type of year, very frustrating and slow going off the start, sluggish, lots of death, doom and gloom. I was in a pretty tough spot this spring. I think the takeaway when I'm looking back on the year is as I allowed myself to be able to shift gears. I was able to work out of my comfort zone. Like a lot of what I do is internalized. I make my own queens. I make my nukes. I use my nukes to replace queens and to protect myself from losses. And the thing was, I used up that battery the year before, so I had nothing to fall back on that year. I had another real tough year. I was short on numbers and I had disease problems. I wasn't able to fulfill any type of queen rearing. So what I did was, like, I'm a believer also in safety net programs. Like our farm is a subscriber to crop insurance and such, and it's got us in out of many type jams. So I do the same with my bee operation. Do the same with my bee operation. So I was able to tap into my safety net program, use the cash, and buy in the bees this year as opposed to selling bees. I bought in the bees, bought in the queens. I was able to shift my whole mindset of my own breeding program and my protected stock. I was able to allow myself to bring the bees in to fill the boxes, to make the honey to get through this year, and then I'm going to take on next year. So that's basically the takeaway from what I did this year, is just working on and medication. Like I hardly ever use medication except for varroa mites. And I think I got myself into maybe of a stubborn state of not using antibiotics or any type of assistance in that way, because I believed in healthy bees were able to manage that issue. The only problem is healthy bees get sick too. And it doesn't matter how much nutrition you focus on. A sick bee is a sick bee, and nutrition isn't medication. And I think I convinced myself now that I have to be able to recognize a sick bee and treat it when it needs to be treated, and not wait till it's too long gone to where I just about lose everything. So at any rate, that's pretty much what I took away from it. I hope that made any sense to you, though.
That is very similar to what I said, as far as you get in these routines and you do it the way you've always done it and get the results you've always gotten. And you have to be able to sometimes go outside of your comfort zone and bump yourself in a direction or another to keep those bees alive, right? So,
and also in regards to colony management practice, also, like I'm working through typically what I do is I focus on the good ones in the spring, and on all the poor quality colonies, either I shake out or push to the side into the nuke program. Well, I had so many poor colonies and so little good colonies that I couldn't shake out all my poor ones, because then I had nothing left. So I had to shift my mindset away from everything that I did for the last forever and equalize everything out. So these poor they weren't necessarily poor. I keep saying you never fix up a poor colony or a weak colony. You fix up small colonies. And my colonies were sick, but they weren't poor. They just need to be helped along. So I convinced myself, okay, they're small. They need assistance. I need boost. I need to boost them. So I went through, and it was painful work that first time because we hardly had our colonies big enough. We're building brood the best we could, and we're taking brood from colonies that we normally wouldn't have. And I'm like, are we going to sacrifice the viability of these good ones just by boosting the small ones? So we took frame of brood, and a good shake of bees on them, so they're almost dripping with bees, and drop them into those poor, smaller colonies just to give them a chance to show themselves. And then the next time around, that's when I did my routine where I went through and assessed and took away the poorer ones. Anything that responded favorably to that boost, okay, here, we've got some optimas here. We're going to work on it. So then when I typically split, and taking those bees, those precious bees, and instead of taking them into a split where you step ahead, I took those precious bees and I did the same thing. I threw them back into the small ones, and that goes against every grain in my body. You don't do that. You don't prop up the big one or the small ones with the big ones like that. You use the big ones to build ahead of you, to grow, to replace those poor ones. So I shifted backwards again, and I brought the whole apiary all together into this kind of poor, miserable state. And then as we drifted, then I got into medication and better weather, thank goodness. Got ourselves into summer. And the other thing I did was I sent Carrie and another employee around to do a midsummer equalization round. I never dig into the nests through the summer. For one thing, we're too busy, but for another thing, those are my precious bees to build my honey crop. So we went, I calculated, like I did the math on it. So I was waiting and waiting and waiting until I could see the honey crop come in and filling. And then I looked at the brood nest down there, and I was saying, okay, when that brood hatches out, the flow is going to be over. So that's when we went in and we took those brood frames out, and then we shifted back and boosted up those small ones again. A terrible amount of work, just a terrible amount of work, but it worked. It equalized things out again. So then by the end of the flow, everything was just firing on all cylinders. It was quite exciting to see right at the end, but my flow was gone. My flow was completely gone. Like I dried out. We're basically almost in a drought type situation here. My flowers knocked off, my nectar ended just like that. So then what we did, we went to treating and we went to feeding. But then the other thing I've never done before, and I've kind of hinged off, like I'm going out of my comfort zone again, and this is my workload comfort zone, is I hinged on some of the work that Lloyd Harris did. I don't know, Brad's probably talked about Lloyd Harris, and he's the godfather of understanding bee longevity and just the dynamics of the shift of the bees throughout the stages throughout the year. And he's always preached that these late summer bees, all these bulk bees I have hanging on the outside of my colonies, he said, use those bees because they're unemployed bees, he calls them. Use those bees, put a queen in there, and start those units up again. And I've never done that because I've been too busy extracting honey or too busy with harvest or too stubborn to do something like that or invest into queens. But I went and bought a bunch of queens. I used a bunch of this old equipment that was sitting in storage, just being chewed up by wax moth, put it on, gathered those beans, put a queen in there. And what a neat little trick that's been. Those colonies will probably be my best colonies coming out of winter right now, So it's just so many things going on. I didn't know what to do. So I just, steer this way, that way, whatever, just take all the advice you can. And I just didn't follow the rules I'm typically used to.
Just throw everything against the wall and see what sticks, right? That's kind of what we did in 2020, as I recall. The business models were starting to, kind of collapse, and so we just started doing everything that we could possibly do and figuring out what's working. I hope Todd's coming back. He was,
his internet kicks in
always
and out
have
a lot of
internet
times.
problems. So, Charlie, I want to get your take on this too, and I'm going to bring in one more guest before we do, but I'm going to get you to give us a nutshell of your season Um,
Well,
there's
okay,
Todd's back,
there's
and
Todd back.
I'll
Yeah.
just introduce Jared. Jared is a budding beekeeper, not too far from me. I guess you're probably about 20 miles away from me, aren't you? And he's become a really good friend as well. I asked him if he wanted to join us tonight on our live feed, and so here's Jared.
Hey everybody, thanks for
Say
having
hi,
me.
Jared.
Can you hear
So
me okay?
yeah. Oh yeah, very good. Very.
Yeah,
Turn
turn
it
your
out. You're gonna have to
turn the
turn your
YouTube
YouTube thing off, though.
the volume.
So
Yeah.
if you've been, if you're on the YouTube stream, Jared, you can mute that stream because it sounds like that's what we're hearing. But
Yeah, it's a feedback.
if you've been listening to the conversation, we're talking about kind of in a nutshell this season and what worked, what didn't, and what's the plan for next year. And so, Charlie, give us a summary of what you've got in that realm.
Well, looking back through the season, it was a bit of a learning experience for me. Number one, last fall, I fed Apis Biologic for the first time. So when my honey season starts late March, early April, and goes till the 4th of July or the 1st of July. So, I mean, I'm setting up my hives for honey production by like the last week of March. So when I got into them this year, I run all mediums. I'm used to having 3 mediums through the winter. And usually the bottom box is empty of bees. And then with Apis being put in there, kind of got caught off guard where I had bees from the bottom board to the roof, and I had brood from all boxes. I had more bees than I've ever seen in my life. And managing that amount of bees and the way I set up my hives and stuff was a eye opener. So now I've got to completely change that part of my beekeeping come next spring. And then I went through my honey hives, and Bob Benny would always say, if you see him, mark him, which is your queen. And I know how to mark, and I know, you don't get the antennas, painted or anything like that. And I did all that, and I had 4 queens go down on me, and I can't tell you whether they were older queens or not, but it seemed to be the ones that I marked were the ones that went down on me. So I had to take some of my nukes and, paper them in and get those new queens in there to keep the honey flow going. Of course, it was sort of like right into the start of the honey flow. So it saved me there. And that was a challenge for me. And then there was 4 queens, and there was one hive that kept giving me problems throughout the whole summer, being queenless. And so I guess I kind of took a page from Ian, and also I had talked with you, Brad, about it, and where, take your losses in the fall type of thing, where, all right, don't utilize a perfectly good nuke with an established queen and try to requeen this hive that's giving you problems. Just take that hive and shake it out, and then put a new nuke and new queen, established queen and hive in its place. And that for me is a big deal, because I won't say I'm a backyard beekeeper. I'm more of a small sideliner, but the mindset of, what are you going to, you're shaking these bees out in the grass, well, you've told me they're going to go to other hives and populate them. I had a nuke that was queenless. I had a virgin queen. I put her in there. She got mated. She started laying. And then all of a sudden here lately, she went, it went queenless. Where she went to, who knows? And that was something that I also learned from you guys, that, even though you're professional and commercial beekeepers, you don't know why that happens. It just happens. And that's something you just, take as a situation that just happened. So I did the same thing. Now on that particular hive, I learned to, I had an inner cover with some wax on it. I made a ramp and I shook those bees from that hive in front of another hive that needed bees on the grass and a little bit on that ramp. And then they all marched, the nurse, the nurse bees and all marched up the ramp and obviously into the hive and stuff. And that was some of the techniques and then Ian had came on my channel and we got into a real good conversation about that and understanding I guess the mind of the bee in some ways as we think about it as humans, that you're getting these bees and they'll learn how to submit to that other hive. Please let me in because I don't want to die. I want a new house. And that, that thought process for us makes it more understandable. And
I never thought about it that way.
And it, I don't know. I have to think about it in that circumstance. And I've got 2 more hives out there that one of them, it's a nice hive. It's got plenty of population in it. And I've been watching it. It was like I asked him about his hives in one of his videos. And he says, yes, that hive was marked because there was a queen issue. Well, this is the same situation. It's a little 5-frame nuke. It's got a queen issue. I've been watching it for several weeks. And I'm like, okay, there's definitely no queen. There's no eggs. There's no brood. There might be a little bit of cat brood that was there before the queen disappeared. So it's like, okay, I got a hive down, another nuke down there that needs some population. So I'm going to shake them on the ground, put a little ramp there so they can kind of walk up in there and hopefully help that hive get through the wintertime.
That's a powerful maneuver, isn't it? And it seems way too simple to be.
It's simple, really, but thinking about it, in that circumstance, to understand that it's like what Ian said about, I seen him, he had a hive there and he took bees from this other queenless hive and he not shook them in front of the hive, but he shook them off to the side of that box. And he explained that, you wanted them bees to kind of walk around the side of that box. And by the time they get to the front entrance, they're like, oh, they're ready to be submissive to whoever is in charge on that entrance. And that's stuff you don't read about. And that's what the power of these live chats has helped me out in that. And I kind of feel like I finally gained a more of a commercial attitude towards my bees by just these little small steps. And because
you don't be hobbyists with the nerve to shake all their bees on the ground very often, do you?
Well, I think I've had this talk in bee clubs and amongst some people in the more senior members, and something that we have discussed is okay, a backyard beekeeper might have 2 and you might have 4 hives. Well, we have numbers, so we've got, let's say for me, I've got 30 some hives. All right. If I lose a few, no big deal. Well, if you lose 2 or 50% of your hives, if you only have 4, it's a big deal for that person. And it's hard for them it's like, oh, I got to buy a queen. No, you don't need to buy a queen. That's kind of the level of thought process at that level with the amount of hives and stuff. But they always tell you, they always tell you to take your losses in the fall instead of in the spring.
Yeah.
But that's a nice saying, but understanding that saying by
you've got to make that call, right? To say, well, this is not going to make the winter, so it's done, right? Well, let's end it now instead of just open an empty box in the spring. You can do one or the other. So what are you turning that into then for next year, for your next season, Charlie?
But the thing of it is, you change
your model at all?
I'm not going to. I'm not going to mark my queens. I don't think. I'm just going to leave that alone and do the manipulation that I do. Make sure
that take the gloves off.
Well,
I watched you manipulating queens with your gloves on your videos, and I'm tearing my hair out. Take the gloves off, Charlie. Take the gloves off.
Yeah, but we don't have them nice Canadian friendly bees up there. They're stingless up there. It seems like in Canada.
And that was actually to me the impetus of why I didn't say, okay, I gotta start to not wear gloves. I got to that point with my queens when I was marking queens and handling queens and stuff. And I'd take my gloves off and I put my gloves on, and then I'd take my gloves off and put my gloves on. And then after a little while, it's like, where are my gloves? I don't know where my gloves are anymore. And it was like, yeah, I don't really need my gloves. And it was just kind of a progression. But that was the impetus for me, was the queens.
That's kind of like with me
handling
and the
queens.
smoker, trying to keep the smoker lit, and it was always going out. And I got to the point where I never smoked my bees. I just go in, and most of the time they're very calm, and you don't beat them around. And I don't, I still smoke them occasionally, but it depends on what time of the year it is. But that's my biggest thing is I guess what I'm saying is like when you're shaking the bees out, you're not just getting rid of the bees, you're harnessing what's left of production or by using the bees and
Absolutely. Absolutely. Every
and that's
hive,
what moves. I don't think
even if it
anybody
doesn't have
talks
a
about
queen,
that.
even
It's
if
like
even if a colony doesn't have a queen, if there's no queen in the hive, there's value there.
there's
I mean,
value,
if nothing
right?
else,
I don't
there's
think
equipment,
anybody
there's drawn,
explains that.
there's drawn comb at the very least, right? There's a box, there's a lid, there's a bottom board, there's frames,
Well,
there's probably drawn comb. There's maybe even pollen in that drawn comb. Well, guess what? That's value. There's honey in there. There's feed. Maybe there's brood. Maybe there's a ton of bees, but maybe there's no queen. There's still a lot of value there, and it's just knowing kind of what you can do with that and how to use it. And that
I-
shakeout thing is very
right.
powerful that way.
Well, I think that's the thing. Most people recognize, oh, I can realize the comb. We can, maybe it has some eggs or some cat brood in there, but I don't think nobody has talking about that the I call it the bee power or the bees that are still in there. If it's a good sized cluster of bees, but to a queen, yes, you can make them kind of go into this hive here by shaking them off in that front of that hive that has a need and all that. And, it's like you and your zombie hives. That was another thing I learned. It's like, hey, don't pinch that queen off. Put it over here and a little nuke or something.
If you got an empty box,
Yeah, you can use the
you know.
brood out of it and stuff like that. And then, like Ian just stated there, where now I don't know how you did it, but you had all them bees hanging out on the front. I don't know whether you scooped them up, in order to. How did you do that, Ian? You scooped them up and put them in another box to be able to make a nuke.
Oh, yeah. With that, what I did, you're talking about my late season bulk bee splits, are you?
Yeah, yeah. You said that the college fella told you, the one that you listen. He said
So
to take those.
what I did.
out.
Yeah,
Go
what I
ahead.
did, sorry, I had the delays working here, but what I did was when I took the honey boxes off, all the bees, like tens of thousands of bees, are now down in one box, and they're
Right.
bearding on the front, they're packed in front. So I wanted to use those bees, right? So I put a full brood box on top, and those bees instead of the front, they just hung out into that second box. So it's a really heavily populated hive. When I took that box off, that box is full of bees. If that hive wasn't as heavily populated, when I took that box off, it didn't have as many bees in there, right? So there's a little bit of variability. I had to do a little bit of equalization that way, but it's basically that. Just put the box on, they filled the box, I took the box off, put a queen in, and then I walked away. It was more about my time than it was about anything else through that practice. It was, how can I get this done in so little time, because I'm tired. I just pulled honey all day. We're extracting honey all day. My kids are at the lake at a campfire, and here I am late in the evening pulling boxes off these colonies. I'm tired. So it was more so just pushing myself to do the work to make it work. Yeah.
Well, what you just stated there is my new, I'll say, technique. Is that I'm gonna, like I say, I run my honey hives with 3 mediums, and I usually take one of those off to put them into 2 mediums, which is my single brood chamber management process. All right, guys, it works. It doubles my honey production, and but next year my plan is to smoke that top box down, the bees down in there, pull that box off, and shake any bees that are still on them frames, and then make sure that I don't have the queen excluder, and then put several honey supers on, and then put that brood box back up on top so it'll draw those bees up through those boxes. And in order for me to go down into the bottom 2 boxes, I'll reduce the amount of bees down there, and I can move bees in a box instead of have bees up in the air, bees on the ground,
Yeah.
which I don't want. And so it's a learning curve, but I mean, that's what I'm doing.
So I want to bring Todd in here now and pose the same question to you, Todd. Your season, what went right and wrong, and what are you going to do next season? Just do the same old thing, or are you going to change it up a bit for whatever reason?
Well, the season started out with bad weather. We had tons of rain, tons. I basically live in a desert. We had a little over 5 inches of rain last year, and we had over 21 inches this year. So it really changed the dynamics that as far as plant growth. But before I get to that, the thing that really got me or set me behind was the rain, the weather. Oranges were 4 weeks late. They didn't bloom to basically the end of April. And that's my biggest crop. Or at least I thought that was my biggest crop. And then it turned out that it was wildflower because of all the rain that we got. And supposedly it's going to do the same thing this year. We're in an El Nino pattern. So I even think they said up your way, Brad, it's going to be a warmer winter for you. But
your lips to God's ears.
But so I'm planning on the same thing again. I started out in singles, but I quickly went to doubles because I fed Apis, and Apis Biologics made those hives explode. And then with the combination of the wacky weather, I didn't know what was going on. So I didn't even put the queen excluder on. I just put a box on and kept going from there. And then, I did put excluders on, but it was just nuts. I did I had a cell builder until a virgin invited herself to hatch early, and then she knocked down 47 cells. So that kind of put me a little behind. I peaked out at 84 hives. Right now I'm at 70. I have pallets, so I have room for more boxes again. I'm going to make another order for boxes and pallets. And then, as most of you guys know, I'm going to be jumping in with a commercial guy here, hopefully, on some almond contracts. So I will hopefully be able to get some boxes or some pallets into almonds this coming February and go from there. Now, back to the amount of rain. We had yellow thistle that came out of everywhere. It was thick. And so I made a lot of wild honey from that. Right now, currently, the California version of goldenrod, it's called blue curl or vinegar weed. It's out in thick patches. It's going right now. I haven't had to feed yet. I've been lucky. And with the price of sugar right now, I feel blessed. And that's kind of been it. So I'm really going to plan on doing pollination. Now, if it doesn't work, one of the things I learned from Ian was you take that double, break it down, you let her lay, get that basketball shape in both boxes, the shape of the brood nest, and then pull it off, slap a queen in there or a queen cell, and away you go. And then start over, and build again. Some of the guys there's a lot of names on the chat that I haven't seen before, but the other regulars, I want to mention something, and Ian didn't pay me to say this. During COVID, I logged in probably 100,000 hours, and most of it was watching videos, and most of it was Ian stuff. But in particular, the biggest thing the best video I've ever seen was the 2019 Spring Rewind, the brood nest management. That had so many nuggets in it. It was gold. He step by step went through the whole year. So that's kind of what I did this year. I remembered that video because I watched it 1,000 times, and I just kind of followed that recipe, except that I'm in doubles right now, not singles. So and that's kind of it.
So, if I could just kind of interrupt, Todd, we're going to lose Ian here in a few minutes,
Okay.
and I just wanted to throw it open if anybody wanted to throw anything at him before he goes. We'll get Jared's season nutshell here in a minute, but I just wanted to make sure if anybody wanted to throw anything at Ian before he has to go, then they'd have that chance.
Todd, that 2019 video, that's why I have ads every 5 minutes. I make a lot of money on it. No, I'm just joking. I didn't do that.
Was I still watch it. I'm not kidding you. I watch it probably 2 or 3 times a month still. Now it's a 2-hour long video. I don't watch all of the 2 hours now, but I know where I need to go back to. I know the parts. I know the time number or the clock. I know where to go. But yeah, the cell builder that you made with the bees just flying out of there, that was amazing. I mean, not flying, but pouring out, and that's what you need. So.
Yeah, that's neat to hear feedback like that. I don't see any of this as like the way you're explaining there, how it's helped you with your beekeeping. I don't see any of this that way on my side. What I'm doing, like I said this a few times before, is, well, I'm doing this as a hobby for one thing. That I'm just reading the comment at the bottom. I have a big ass farm. Yeah, I'm doing this YouTube thing as a hobby to get away from this big ass farm. That's why I'm sitting here talking to you guys on YouTube, because I need a hobby, and this is my hobby. So I provide myself some time for family, and I provide myself time for editing videos because I find that neat. And I find these little aspects of the farm, these little shots, just so interesting. I want to take a picture of it, right? Or I'm walking through a bee yard and I have something I think is smart in my mind, so I want to say it. So I say it in front of this camera, but I'm not saying it to you guys. I'm telling myself my thoughts, thinking of myself 15 or 20 years ago when I was going through that exact same moment. And I just want to tell myself, you idiot, don't do that. This is what you want to do. Or not so much being an idiot, but just, this guidance this way, because this is how I see bees now. The way you were looking at it before, could have been better. So on my perspective, I'm also finding a lot of trouble with beekeepers because of the old saying, everything is regional. They're looking at my method of management, and they're trying to compare it to what they're doing, and they're time zones away from me. Their whole season's different. So they see me shaking bees down into one box at the end of the season and backfilling because winter's coming. Some of these guys are doing the same thing, and their hives are swarming on them. Like, why are my hives? Well, because your season's not done yet, right? You got to read your bees. So now when I'm making these videos, I'm trying to convey more of a understand what you're doing. This is what I'm doing, guys. Just understand this is what I'm trying to do. Relate that to what you are trying to do with your bees. It's the whole basics of the beekeeping world are all the same. It's just we use it differently, and they all are adjusted differently depending where you are. So there you go. Yeah. Thanks for that. It made my day.
Thank you. That the information, like I said in there, it pearls. There's lots. Again, and I know you have to go, but splitting, combining, building cell builders, it's all there. Feeding, everything, and it's just something that I think everybody should watch. I really do. You have a rainy day, spend 2 hours and watch that. I mean, it's amazing stuff. And I am not, I know you made a comment about, everything's regional, and it is, but the concepts that you have out there, that's what I took away from it. I know that I'm not going to get, minus 20 or 30 degrees temperatures here in the winter, but everything else is just the concepts. It's awesome.
Yep. And kind of what Charlie was saying earlier on, and the way you put it, Charlie, is this is the way I see the bees, and this is the way I think of the bees. Just the whole idea of how do you understand bee behavior by thinking different ways. Like I mentioned Lloyd Harris, and I talk about him all the time about this whole shift into the winter nest, winter bees. And I keep talking about winter bees. I'm building these winter bees to winter, as they transition into winter. And Lloyd is like, no, that's completely wrong. That's not the way it is, Ian. It's more of, it's not the winter bees are being developed. It's just, how's he put it, Brad? It's kind of like a
the
transition.
Change in it's the transition of the bees instead of a different bee. Like he doesn't ascribe to a different bee. The bees live longer at one point in the season.
Yeah, at a certain point in time, this delay is really bugging me, but sorry, I stepped on you. But at a certain point in time, they go from a summer-lived bee, with their age die-off rate like this, to a winter bee, just like that.
Yeah.
And there's that inflection point. That inflection point's just like, and I consider those winter bees because that's the way I understand it, Lloyd. I'm building my winter bees. They got to be hatched out by the end of August and September. They're going to be my winter bees. But no, they're not winter bees. They're not winter bees until that inflection period is met. And that's usually in the middle of October or so. We're probably talking exactly the same thing. It's just he's more scientific technical. And like Charlie was saying, I need to understand it. This is how I understand it. So this is the way I'm going to move forward on that. So it's kind of neat to hear you say that, Charlie.
Yeah, I try to, it's like I tell people about feeding, and they'll say, well, I put a jar up there. And I say, you're regulating the amount of feed going into that hive. And I listened to Michael Palmer, and he stated it. That's where I got it from, is that the feed is coming in slow enough that they'll utilize it to feed the babies and feed themselves, but they're not really going to pack it away. So I tell people, now, of course, I use a top high feeder. You guys use buckets. It depends on how you do it. But I says, you've got to switch their brain. If bees can think, is that you put feed in a top high feeder. Now, instead of 300 bees sucking it down out of a jar, now you've got 2,000 bees taking it in, and they're saying to themselves, this is what I think about, is that, hey, we can't eat all this. We've got to start storing it because it's coming in the hive too fast. And trying to get people to understand that concept. And that's the way I, put it across to people. And it works for me, and like you were saying, Ian, about what you do in your area about regional, and we had talked a little bit several lives ago where I try to do some of the things that you and Brad do about honey supers and not disturbing the nest. And it just didn't quite work for me, where I'm starting to see swarm cells. So I went back to what works for me. And that's sort of like equal, or basically I'm pulling half the brood out of the nest and putting empty comb in and putting that brood upstairs on that top box. It's like a demery thing. And it boosts the column strength of bees and also increases the honey production. So it works for me in my area. So it's just, it's what, like Todd is in California. He doesn't really have a winter. And Bob, he's in South Carolina, has a really light winter. So we all have to use, like you say, the basics, but we have to tweak it to our environment in order to make it work right. So that's I'm done.
I'm just gonna, I got to step out. I just got a warning shot. I got to go up to the house. If I ignore that, my evening off, and I can't sit on a computer talking bees.
Don't want to get you in trouble.
So I'm going to run.
All right.
But Charlie, when the single box management, imitation is flattery. So, you might see me on a video talking about single box management.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm doing that.
Hey, one last comment.
Yeah, just own that one. That is yours. Yeah.
One last comment. I just want to say that Carrie's a badass. That's all I got to say about it.
Carrie is a badass.
She does a lot of work around this farm. I kind of hinge on
Yeah.
that spirit of loving work and loving bees, and just not afraid to dive headfirst into the job to get things done. So I gotta go, but I'm just gonna say one thing before I go here. With Carrie, I completely took her out of her comfort zone this year. Usually I have her manage the honey house. That's her baby. She's the one that operates. She extracts the honey and such. I needed her in the yard where she's going to make me money. So I put a bunch of silly ass teenagers in the honey house to run the place. And I pulled Carrie out into the bee yard, and it was, oh boy, it was painful pulling her out. All these things are going to go wrong because they're teenagers. The place is going to blow up. She's like, and I take her out to the yard. And after about 3 or 4 days, that's where she loves to be, is in the yard. Like, the honey house is terrible work, but she's out there and she was getting used to it. And then she wasn't coming back to the honey house as quick anymore. At the end of the day, she still finished up the end of the day helping clean up in that, which I surely appreciated.
The young people.
There's another thing. We worked out of our comfort zone. Sorry, go ahead.
That's all right. Wasn't it a lot of the young folks, your children, that were running the honey house? I think. Well, like the one girl.
So I had 3 of them were mine this year. One of them was Charlie. He was the first year on the farm. April was here the year before, and Michael was a few years. So they all had different experience. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a good.
Yeah, that's nice to work with them.
It's nice family thing, to get them interested in all. That's good.
And my oldest daughter, she's going to be a nurse. And when she was not heavily working, she come back to the farm and helped in the bee yard. So I thought, yeah, that's pretty cool. She even told me, Dad, you don't even have to pay me. I was like, bullshit, I'm going to pay you. This is terrible work. And my youngest, the youngest, the guy, I have 5 kids. She's seeing all this excitement. Everybody's coming to work with Dad. Everybody's making money, and everybody's coming home happy. She was just keen. She's the one in my last video, in the combine video.
Yeah.
So she helped me a few times in the honey house. I have a rule: you can't work on the honey farm unless you're 15, because younger are just not mature enough. She's 13, so my other kids really put their nose at a joint because they weren't allowed to work here when they were 13. But at any rate, I gotta go, guys.
Normal for the baby of the family. Thanks for coming, Ian.
Thank you, Ian.
Yeah,
Really
I
appreciate it.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Well, that was a treat. Thank you, everybody. And what's that, Bob?
I said, did you just feel the vacuum of all the intelligence just getting sucked out of the live stream?
Thanks. There's a void for sure, but I'll leave it at that. So I want to circle back around to Todd, and then I want to bring Jared in the conversation. He's been patiently waiting there. So Todd, for next year, I mean, a lot of the stuff that you talked about was weather. You can't change the weather, at least. Well, let's not get onto that. So what are you thinking for next year? Is there anything you're going to do differently for next year?
It just depends on almonds. If that commercial guy has some room or extra contracts, then I'll probably stick with bringing them back and splitting everything down and doubling all those, and then prepare for next year. Once I get the ball rolling, I won't be able to stop. I understand that. And that's actually what I wanted to do anyway, is get into the almond pollination. So, I'm putting both feet in the pool, as you say, real quick.
Yeah. Well, all the best with it. Hopefully the weather, isn't crazy like it was this year.
Yeah. That's the only thing that might stop me, and it's because there's a creek between the gate and the beehives. So if he can't get down there to get the bees out when he needs them. Oh, let me back up. I don't have a flatbed. I don't have a forklift. So I'm relying on him right now until I could get some, get established and get those. So I'm paying him round trip fees. He's using his forklift, putting him on his flatbed, and putting him with his bees in the same orchard. So as long as he could get to them, then I'm good. But if it was like last year, I wouldn't be able to do it.
I want to bring Jared in now. Jared, so you've had quite a summer. And I hear myself now.
Can you?
I'm not
sure
what's happening with your audio.
Go to the YouTube part and mute that. But don't mute the StreamYard.
I don't think I have YouTube open. I'm just on the stream side of things.
It would be a delay if
I'm not
it was
sure.
YouTube.
I'm sitting here. It's pretty quiet. I've got nothing coming anywhere else. Is it pretty bad, the delay?
3 seconds. Maybe one or 2 seconds.
I could log out and try logging in again. I don't know if that'll set anything.
Try that.
Okay.
All right.
Well.
Well, I see Mr. McNally has just left work, so he's on his way home
He's left the
to
building.
jump on the stream as well. He has left the building.
Look, I even put on a collared shirt for your stream tonight. Oh, and shaved.
I did.
No, Bob did. Bob put a collar and a shave.
And a shave.
Oh, well, I shaved as well. So here's a little something. I was working feverishly today. I had a bunch of tasks to do today, and I didn't get going in the honey house until, I don't know, probably noon. And I actually finished extracting the home yard today. So
nice.
Big milestone. Yay. So we've got it all, well, not quite all of it into the melter right now. So we'll be able to pail that up tomorrow. And the tally, of course, we don't know exactly yet, but the tally looks like it will be in excess of 7,000 pounds out of the home yard this year, which is just astounding. I can't believe that much honey came out of the home yard, because usually I don't get more than, I'll get maybe 4,000 pounds out of the home yard, and I didn't feel like I had that many colonies there this year, but I guess it was actually a really good flow here this year. So we're very happy and very nice for the honey.
It's quality.
What's that?
Sometimes it's not quantity, it's quality of bees.
Well, with this honey flow, I think it's both. A lot of sweet clover this year, so the honey is just spectacular. Yeah, it's weird to see me not in a t-shirt. I'm always in a t-shirt in my videos. So it's nice that the honey house is starting to be a little more, I was going to say roomy, but it's anything but roomy. It's a little less congested. I'll say that. So that's how that's going. I know people have been asking me, which, I'm flattered when somebody asks me, how's your extracting going?
Then Ian would say, "Oh, that's a cute honey harvest." As you
cute
said
honey.
to me, 650 pounds. That's cute.
He never talks like that. He's always gives you credit, no matter what size operation you run. So DC wants to know about the James hives. Gee, where do I start? There were 40 when he brought them, and there are, how many are there? 28 now. So I'm sad to report that some of them didn't make it, and that I don't believe has anything to do with the state or quality of the bees. I think those are very good bees, and And I think
And I think
the still echo, Jared.
So he got a speaker close by.
So
to
I
the
think
microphone?
what happened with those bees is a couple of different things. They were the requeening failures, I think, was the problem, and that was because of swarming and superseding. When you move bees anywhere, particularly that kind of distance, the bees get all jumpy and they kind of think, something's going wrong, and they start blaming the queen. Transport stress, exactly. And so I think a lot of them tried to requeen and weren't successful. I know there were some swarms. So how many were supersedure failures and how many were swarm failures, as far as requeening, I can't say. But I think those were the two reasons that the numbers dwindled now to 20. What did I say? 28 colonies there now. And I don't like Charlie, I think, was talking earlier about the principle of not not trying to requeen something in the fall. Take your loss, shake it out. Just doing some quick math, I realized that every colony that I prepare for winter is going to cost me $40 in preparations. So if I had, what does that make? 12
$480
failures at that yard. If I just don't put that $40 into those 12 colonies, it's $480 that I don't spend, and I can use that. There's a lot of money. So if you calculate even the apiary as a whole, if there's 100, I generally run 100 to 200 colonies. So every colony takes $40 worth of preparations. Okay, do the math quickly. That's $4,000 to $8,000, depending on the size of my apiary at any given point. And most of that's sugar, of course, but definitely other, mite treatments, etc. So you have to be ruthless and say, you know what, you're not going to get it. You're not getting a bag of sugar because you're not good enough. So that's just kind of what's been going on there.
DC's saying combine here, and essentially when you're shaking it out, you are combining. You're combining
exactly. I was going to kind of make that point when Charlie was mentioning that shake method. That is a combine. And the problem with if you're talking about like a newspaper combine or something like that, which is what people normally do, I don't want that thing in a double. Right? It's the wrong time of year for me to have that colony in a double. It has to be in a single for winter. I got myself into 3 doubles last year for winter, and it was just inconvenient. So shakeout is where it's at. There's no brood. These colonies are queenless, and they have been for a while. So there's no brood. There's nothing in. The only thing of value in there is you usually have a whole whack of pollen, which some of that I took out and added it to my little nukes over on the side. So I'm going to bring Jared back in and see if he's resolved his issue. He's not muted, and I don't hear myself.
Oh, there we go.
That's good.
Was that
so, Jared?
So
I logged on my phone, so everyone's like super slow and squishy. I don't know why my computer wasn't working, but if you guys can all hear me, okay?
Yep. Oh yeah.
So,
awesome.
So a lot of the people I suppose aren't maybe as familiar with you and your operation as some of the other guys. So, kind of give us a summary of kind of your operation, what your plans are, and then go into the theme of the day with this season and next.
Sure, sounds good. I just want to say thanks for having me on here, and hi to everybody. I kind of watch in the shadows a lot of time on Fridays when Sawmill Charlie's doing his thing. So I'm familiar with some of the faces here, but I feel kind of awkward being amongst some of the greats in the beekeeping world. So
And Bob.
But,
And Bob. I'm just Bob.
I always see Bob and Charlie every Friday. Yeah. Sometimes I'm
Well,
working. And
if you're coming,
I got it secretly in. Yeah.
well, Jared, if you're coming in, come on in. Jump in if you can.
Yeah, I should. I'll have to do that one of these days. Yeah. So beekeeping this year, I'm about 3 years behind Brad, pretty much exactly. So, so I kind of mimic. I'm not too far from Brad, not too far from Ian. So it's great watching both of their videos because when they're doing things like geographically and seasonally and everything, I'm pretty much exactly where these guys are, which is great. So. Remember when I was getting into it a few years ago and I said, Brad, I'm going to make you my mentor. And he says, okay, well, the first thing you got to do is watch every Ian Stepler video. And I'm not there yet. There's a lot. I can't keep up. The secret is my earpods here. When I'm working doing bee stuff, I've always got things in. So I'm not always seeing the videos, but I'm always listening and learning and watching, listening to different people. So that's pretty good. The last 2 years were pretty rough for wintering. I'm not sure why. Well, 2 years ago, I know why. I had a big flood and it just kind of wiped me out. So I lost most of the bees in the flood. And then this year, I don't know, came out of the winter okay. And then the hive just kept going backwards for about a month. And I did some Nosema testing, like you guys were talking about earlier with some of that when I started. And I treated for that. And I don't know if it was probably the treatment of that. Because I was kind of doing a bit of a dribble technique as per the advice from the guy at the university that was kind of giving me some input on how to do that. And he says, well, this time of year it's tricky because they're not going to take the syrup, so do the best you can. So I don't know if it just got better as the weather got better or if things just I don't know what happened. But anyways, it eventually picked up. And like Todd, I was using Ian's method on the spring management and all that. Like last year, it was probably had 20 or 30 swarms at least that I saw. Like I was literally running around the yard with boxes catching swarms. I think there was one afternoon I caught 5. They were just swarming all day long right on my property. So it was a shit show. So I can
vouch for that. I was there one day.
He was there.
We were just watching. There it goes. There goes another one. There goes another one. There goes another. It's like every couple of minutes there's a swarm leaving. It was just awful.
Well, I know a guy that makes a great swarm lure. You need to try it out.
Product placement.
Plug.
It's big time.
So yeah, I don't know if I had too many swarms this year. If I did, I maybe did. There was a few hives that were strong, and all of a sudden they seemed queenless and bounced back with some cells. So I'm sure I had a few that I didn't see, but
so
it was a lot better.
What was the key to mitigate your swarms this year over last?
I kind of used Ian's method where he talks about how early in the spring he kind of doubles them up into the broods and then splits them away. And then even once I did the splits, remember he talked about just putting another box on top for another couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, giving them room. And that was great because then when I shook everything down, I had all these extra resources to build a ton of nukes. So I think I'm at like 50 or 60 nukes this year that I'm hopefully going to sneak in Brad's shop. We'll see. But I got a lot of nukes.
Here, I thought you were going to say drawn comb.
Do that too.
The drawn comb's been okay.
Sticky fingers.
But I mean, last year you struggled with that, and that was part of just growing pains, right?
Yeah, that was a big thing last year.
James just came in and he struggled with the same thing. Well, I did too. I think we all do.
Oh, I still am.
So anyway,
yeah,
go ahead, Jared.
Yeah, that was the big thing was the growing pains with just kind of learning. And I think it was a bit of a blessing in disguise being hammered back so much because it gave me a lot. I had a lot of extra comb for the first bit of the year. Like last year I was struggling, and this year I grew to a point where I think I maybe have 60 hives ish and maybe another 50, 60 nukes. So I think I'm at a pretty good spot. I listened to Brad's advice about making the nukes early and using them to build me honey and comb and box, like actually get a honey crop, which was good. Whereas before I would just kind of build these hives and think, well, I'll just put them in big boxes and let them grow. And they did, but you'd never get honey out of them that year. And this year, like the boxes seemed to grow and I was getting a honey crop off my nuke yard. So that was kind of cool. I don't know how they'll winter. Like this is the first year I've really done nukes in, well, last year I wintered a little bit and it was okay, but this is the first year I've really done a lot more nuke building. So we'll see how they go and how the winter goes. But overall, it's pretty good. I guess one of the biggest things for me this spring was I developed a bee allergy, so that kind of put a bit of a wrench in my plan.
Yeah, that's
So,
kind of big.
yeah, so it was just a little something, but I've kind of worked with it so far. And first couple of years, what was it? First day out, I was at Brad's a couple times over the winter time, and I kind of wanted to poke in there a few times, just some background on that. About 3 years ago, I got stung in the back of the neck, and just full anaphylactic shock. Luckily, I had an EpiPen, which I was never allergic to bees. I'd been stung like 100 times before, nothing. But I have 3 kids, and I asked the doctor, I said, I'm a beekeeper, can I get an EpiPen? And he said, oh, you allergic to bees? And he says, I don't think so. I've been stung like 100 times, 1,000, whatever. I've been stung lots, no problems. But I said, I got kids and just beekeeper I'd like to have. He says, yeah, no problem. So I got a couple pens. So anyways, the first time was a few years ago. We're just walking through the yard, not even doing any beekeeping, just walking through the yard, got stung in the back of the neck. I'm like, got me. And within about 10 seconds, I was just sneezing like crazy and just full. And within about 5 minutes, couldn't breathe anymore and all that. And finally took the EpiPen, went to the hospital. That was kind of weird. So I was kind of depressed about that for a bit. I went out the next day and I did the Brad approach where I was just wearing a head veil, but I was wearing my t-shirts and my shorts because I wanted to see what would happen, because I had all this time and money invested into bees, and I was kind of upset about that. And it was in the middle of COVID, so some of my other businesses were shut down. Everything was not going good. So I started just kind of poking around the hives a bit and got stung in the leg. And I called my wife. It's like, because I was just in the yard, just 500 feet from the house. I got stung by a bee. She says, what are you doing out there? I says, I got to see if this was a one-off or what happened. So well, 5 minutes later, nothing. 10 minutes later, nothing. 20 minutes later, nothing. They kept calling me, okay, yeah, I'm good. So anyways, I got stung ton more times after that, nothing. So I wasn't sure what was up with that. I went to the doctor and said, hey, can I get referred to a specialist? And eventually saw a specialist, and he says, that's pretty interesting that you went into this. He says, maybe it was an anaphylaxis, like we're not sure, we'll monitor you. But I was kind of in the system with the specialist. And then that was 2 years ago. And then last year, nothing, like just status quo, getting stung a bunch here and there, all over the place, and no problems, no nothing. And then this year, the first day out was in the springtime. I was trying to be all tough like Brad and Ian. I'm like, I'm not gonna. It's like it was pretty early spring and the bees were kind of sleeping. So I was poking around the hive all morning, and they were pretty docile and nice. It was spring, and I stung a couple times here and there. And then thought, okay, I'll put a veil on. They're starting to get in my face, and then worked with my hands a few more times. Got stung in the hand a few more times, nothing. And I thought, okay, I'll put some gloves on and kind of get sick of getting stung already today. And then it was like the 6th or 7th time I got stung in the hand. And within about a minute or two, I felt like I was just getting super, super nauseous. Like it was almost like when you overexert yourself and you just like, you feel like you run a big race or something, and you're just, that's how I felt. But we were pushing pretty hard because it was starting to rain, and we were going through about 50 hives, me and a person who was helping me, Anne. She's been my main bee helper this year. So I just thought, well, maybe we were lifting and going super hard. So I thought, I got to sit down. But then within about 5-10 minutes, it was like full on anaphylactic, stuck the EpiPen, went to the hospital again. And it was like, wasn't really sure what to do at that point. So I was half thinking like, do I get out of bees or what do I do? I went out the next time, was super careful. Went out a couple more times, didn't get stung. Then the next time I did get stung, same thing, like full on anaphylactic, tipped the EpiPen. Decided to not go to the hospital that time, but just kind of monitor it, and that was okay. And the third time I went out, and it was early in the morning before work, and I was moving bees out to the yard, and it's like, I don't know, must have been 5 o'clock in the morning. Had all the bees loaded on the trailer. I did all my splits and everything, and I was ready to move these bees, and had them on the trailer, all tied down, and then I got stung in the armpit, and then same thing, like full on whatever. Took the EpiPen, woke my wife up, says, you got to drive me to the yard. It was just a mile down the road. I said, a couple miles. I said, you got to at least drive me. We got to at least take the trailer there. And I said, if I go downhill, then we'll figure it out from there. We'll go to the hospital or something like that. So I just wanted to get the bees off the property because we had all this work going into getting them there. And within about half an hour of just kind of pushing through it and stuff, it kind of went away. But I was really thinking after that about maybe getting out of bees, because it was like, okay, this is like 3 times in a row, nothing. So all summer I was like pretty leery about it, and I had a couple people that were really helping me with the bee operation, doing a lot of the work, and I was still doing a fair bit, but not as much. But I was really being careful with. I got a new bee suit. The one I had was full of holes and everything, so that didn't help. So got a new bee suit. Was very careful, but I mean, inevitably eventually get stung. So then probably a month later got stung, and I was fine. And then was kind of like happy about that. And then a couple of days later got stung again. And I've probably been stung, I don't know, 20 times since then, and been fine. So I'm kind of baffled because I don't really know what's going on, and I don't really know how to proceed. So that's the biggest thing with my beekeeping experience this year, is just trying to figure out what to do and where to go. I don't have a death wish, so I'm not like a super adrenaline junkie really. So if I find that this continues, or in the spring next year something happens, I'll probably will get out of it, or I have enough other things I can do. But this is one of the things that I just really enjoy most. So yeah, that was my kind of beekeeping experience. I am working with an allergist now, and we're doing like the venom therapies. He's treating me for wasp, hornet, and bee venom, but it doesn't. I get like the little micro dose. I guess they start you off at a tiny percentage, and they keep upping it up. And yeah, I'm just hoping that maybe through the winter it'll kind of keep my tolerances up, and I'm hoping in the springtime maybe I'll be normal, but we'll see.
Well, we're hoping with you. You know,
Yeah, thanks.
I think just about everybody here can relate and feel the grief as well, with the prospect of having to give up. Yeah, that's the antidote. It's not an antidote. Have the prospect of having to give up bees. That happened to my dad. He had to give it up, or he gave it up. My mother had allergy, and so he gave up bees. And he always talked about his beekeeping fondly, and now I know why. Having done that. Well, thanks for sharing that, Jared.
Yeah, no problem.
And,
it was quite the experience. Like, it'd be different if my kids were allergic. I'd in a heartbeat get rid of them, and I just
yeah.
So I don't have a death wish or nothing. Like I'm kind of monitoring it, and like I said, it's been pretty good the last few times, and so I'm gonna monitor it and see. And that was kind of my plan. Was after the first few
let's
times,
hope that's
just
kind of gonna come on the positive side instead of negative now.
Yeah.
Maybe
exactly.
Maybe you're on the way out. Who knows?
I'm pretty optimistic, so I'm gonna keep pumping through and see how it goes. So this year, otherwise for bees, it's been pretty good. I'm trying to figure out. I'm not even sure how much honey I got this year. I've got it written down, all the different sizes. I got to calculate it up. It's been a bit of a busy fall with other things going on, and I've had a couple people that have been really helping me a lot this year, which has been great. So we gotta figure out and see. But
well, we have to move on, and that's all the time we have for today. So thanks everybody for coming. Oh, James, I'm sorry you didn't get to say anything, James.
Oh,
I'm totally kidding.
That's what happens when you're late to the party, right?
Well, if we stick to the 2-hour rule, then we've got almost a half an hour for you, James. So you'll have to cut your speech in half, and so if you've been listening along, you kind of know the theme that I brought up. That's what did you learn this year that you're either not going to do or do more of next year, kind of thing.
So I haven't been listening. I've been hard at it there. But what did I learn this year? Oh, lots. I think that's just beekeeping, though. I mean, if you stop learning, you've stopped beekeeping, maybe. So let's see. Where do I start? Well,
tell me about your mother. No, sorry.
So I was going to say, still struggling with the drawn comb. So I mean, next year I'll be much better off. So I've got. What have I got? I probably have 80, close to 100 boxes of drawn comb there now. That's that's not full. So I'll be better off with that next year. I learned.
Are you waxing frames
I'm
like in the
still
winter?
So I'm still waxing frames. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll have probably. Well, I haven't put the order in yet. I wanted to get that in here as soon as I get things done. So obviously, I'm still a little bit behind the 8 ball, but I'm beginning to think maybe that's just beekeeping. And so as much as
Of course it is.
I was going to say, as much as I make the plans, I can't ever seem to get ahead of it. But so I'll be probably ordering about another. I'm going to say probably 400 boxes, 400 to 800 boxes, and of course with that comes the 4,000 to 8,000 frames. So I know what I'll be doing again this winter. I learned this is the first year I actually put bees on canola. So I learned a lot about bees in a canola field. So if you think you've seen a honey flow, put them on canola. So, up until now, I've been trying to focus on, the alfalfa and the clover fields and kind of that kind of niche of the honey. But so I made the mistake early on in this year of trying to manage my bees on the canola the same way. So, here they're ready for a box. I'd put a box on. I'd come back, a week later, and they're plugged right back out. So I'd put another box on, thinking, "Oh, this is going well." I'd come back a week later, and they're plugged right back out. So
a week later, they plugged that box in 3 days.
Exactly. So then, now you're throwing 2 boxes on, right? And you come back out a week later, and those 2 boxes are plugged right out. So, anyways, so what did I learn? I learned if you're going to put bees on canola, you better have lots of woodware frames and be ready for that flow. So
I learned something about not firsthand, but from others, from another newer beekeeper about canola flow too, is that I talk about drawn comb, and typically drawn comb is for brood chambers and whatnot. I'm not a real big advocate of of blowing a bunch of money on drawn comb for honey supers, because they build the comb in the honey supers. However, if you're going to be on a canola flow, you better have drawn comb, because they can't build the comb fast enough to store the honey.
Exactly.
Crazy thing, eh?
Exactly.
So you got to have drawn comb for you. I mean, probably you get away with something like half drawn comb if you had to, but you definitely need drawn comb in your honey supers on a canola flow.
Absolutely. So that's one thing that I learned. The other thing I think the most valuable, and I'm really realizing that now, is extraction equipment. So, if you, I can't remember whose stream we were on, but one of the tips Ian gave me is spend the money on the extraction equipment. It'll you'll never lose money on the extraction equipment to make sure you get the right line. So I didn't fully do that, and I should have, because the uncapper that I rebuilt has absolutely changed the way I do things in the honey house. Well, my honey garage. So of which I got to get cleaned out before my real honey gets mad, because she wants to park in there again. It's starting to get cold. But yeah, I'm filling up the 60 frame uncapper and that with that uncapping and that outfeed table so quick, and I mean it's a game changer. So as soon as I can get it put into a proper extractor and a proper unboxer and stuff like that, it's going to cut my time way down. Like the uncapper alone has already made a huge difference. So if just one piece of equipment in that extraction line can make that much of a difference, when you get it all fit together, it's going to be a huge difference. So that's one thing that I was told, and I was looking for it. I just finance wise and things like that, just couldn't swing it, but I can see where it's going to make a huge difference. What else have I learned?
Good.
You learn southern beekeepers don't know crap about their bees in the spring.
No, actually, I've learned a lot about the southern bees and the southern beekeepers. So and that's kind of through this channel and stuff here too. Um, you know,
I agree. I find it fascinating. Like, Bob saying, well, I don't really have a winter, nothing like us as far as preparing your bees for winter is just feed them all winter.
you
But
know,
I don't want to say either that it's easier keeping bees in southern climates. I don't think it's easier at all. It's crazy. Like the
well,
stuff you guys go through is just your season is so long, first of all.
exactly.
Uh,
Well, and every time Bob phones and says, what do you think I should do here?" It's like, well, I never even thought of that. Like, so
Hi, Beatles.
it's interesting to start thinking about things from a different perspective, and that's actually been really interesting. And believe it or not, it's helped me up here because it's had me think about things a little bit differently, of which I probably wouldn't have if some of these questions hadn't come up. One of the other big things I learned this year is I really have to ramp up my queen grafting and my queen rearing, part of my business, if you will. So I struggled hard this year at the beginning of the year, trying to rely on bringing queens in, and it's hard enough to bring queens in, and I'm even harder because Calgary's 8.5 hour drive, Edmonton's a 5 hour drive. In order to get anything flown up here, it's an extra day or two. So I've come to the conclusion that in where I'm at, trying to order queens just it's not a viable option. So I was a little bit late in spinning up and getting my queen rearing operation going, but as it is, I think I still ended up rearing just under 500 queens this year. So, but I've definitely got to step that up for next year.
Now, are you selling those as virgins and whatnot, or you're
Nope. So
those aren't all in your operation today, I would assume.
They're not. So what did I do? I sold at the beginning of the year. I had to run and get some, but most of those went into nukes that I had sold. I requeened 100% of my operation. Every queen I have in my operation this year is going into winter now is a 2023 queen. And of course, then I grew, as well. So I had some that didn't come back. Although I raised those, they didn't all come back successful. So I'm going to say I'm probably about an 85 to 87% mating success rate. So you start dropping, out of 500 queens with an 80, even if you said 80%, you lose a 20 out of every 100, right?
Okay. So the 500 was like cells kind of number.
Where 500 was, that's what hatched out. They just didn't necessarily all come back mated.
Okay. I see. Yeah. Cool.
So, but it's been the learning curve again has been straight up. So it is
always is, man.
It's
not a sport for the meek, is it?
No,
for the faint of heart.
Yeah, and I've grown quickly. So I'm going to say that's the other thing that I think most important. If I can, if you ask me a question, what the number one was, is, as you know, I do the math, I crunch the numbers, I like all those numbers, but they don't necessarily always tell the true picture. So, to grow as quick as I did to where I'm at, the proof will be in the pudding in the spring as to how successful I've been, as it always is. But for the most part, I've got strong bees that are going into winter. My hives are full. If anything, I'm probably a little bit ahead of the game here right now. I'm trying to get them plugged out. In fact, I've got one apiary that really isn't taking syrup anymore, and you take the lid off, and you can see they're already pretty much plugged right out and full. So I'm going to leave that bucket on for probably a couple more weeks, just so that they can maintain, if you will, so they don't eat their stores. They'll eat out of the bucket.
Yeah.
But
Bob, while just sorry, James, to interrupt for a second. While while you're giving us your synopsis of your season and projection for next year, let's go ahead and put the link up there for anybody else who wants to kind of join us on the
I won't be able
on
to.
the
I'm not an
screen here.
admin on your channel. So
You're not.
yeah,
Oh, I thought you were.
I am on StreamYard, but not in your YouTube, right?
Oh, I see. Oh, you need to do it on YouTube. Okay, so I'm just going to do
I was
that.
going to say too. I just wanted to thank you for having me on. I got to take off though. My wife's out with one of my kids, and my other two are in the house. They're I'm in the camping
Okay.
trailer. They're ready for bed, and I got to get
Well-
them going. But thanks for having me on. I've been really enjoyed this.
Well, thanks for joining us, Jared. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you coming on and or letting me come on and all the stuff that everyone shares. I'm watching everybody's channel all the time and learning. And like this Friday night, I'm checking in here. I'm always watching your stuff when I'm working and doing B stuff, and always following James. James doesn't post as much stuff as you or Ian does, but
No,
I enjoy watching the stuff when James
I was pretty
posts
busy. I posted a video here this past week, and a bunch of people are like, "Hey, you're not dead." So
stuff. I didn't see that. I'm gonna have to go look, but okay. I'll have
Take
to
care,
catch
Jared.
up with you later, James. I know you're always building stuff, and I'm building a few more projects. I want to pick your brain on. I need an engineer's insights on it. So I built a little mini stepler arm that kind of pivots and picks up my hives, but it's
Yes.
it needs some work. But I'll pick your brain on that another time.
all right.
Anyways, take care. Have a good night, guys.
See you, Jared.
Good night, Jared. Now, I wonder if I did that right, Bob.
Well, we got 2 new people in the bottom, so somebody was able to click the link.
We got
I don't-
Doug. I'm glad Doug is going to join
This
us.
is unusual. We're outnumbered by Canadians again.
Yeah.
And Alex decided to jump in, so I guess I did the link right.
It's
I'm
not
doing
pinned.
this. So
Did you pin
You
it?
did. You did. Let's see it.
it's
Okay.
yeah, I did pin it. So I cut James off. So I'll let James is making out on the screen. Get a room.
We all wish we could make out with a unicorn.
Yeah. Haven't seen her. I've been busy the last few days, so I really haven't.
Oh, and you've chosen to spend your time with us.
Yeah. There we
What a
go.
fool. Welcome, Doug and Alex, and I'm going to throw it back to James to finish your talk about your season and what's coming next year.
So yeah, like I said, I'd say the biggest lesson I learned was just growing, and I grew fast. And if I was going to do it again, I probably would grow a little bit slower. So it'll depend, like I said, as to how things come
That's
out.
painful, isn't it? I remember that part.
So, but yeah, I'm getting everything ready to go into the barn, and then what's going to happen for next year. So my plans for next year right now is probably not going to be to increase my hive number. So I think I'm going to stay right where I'm at right now.
And what is that? How many you expect to go in winter?
I knew you were going to ask that. I have no idea. I'm probably just shy of 300.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
but honey crop was good. Wasn't as good because, of course, all those drawn combs were drawing all that wax. But I'm probably just north of 15,000 pounds this year. So that's not too bad. It's not really good with the number of hives, but once again, a lot of splitting, a lot of growing, a lot of comb to build. But yeah, next year I'm probably going to keep my hive number right where it's at. And next year I'm going to really focus on seeing what I can produce out of these hives. So I am doing a little bit of testing here this fall. So I've split my hives basically, a quarter, if you will. So some of them are getting oxalic acid treatments. Some of them are getting Apivar treatments. Some of them are getting no treatments. Some of them are going to get a special treatment. So I didn't keep very good data last year. I'm going to keep much better data this year, and then I want to see what the results of those are coming out of the barn in the winter here. So I am taking a gamble. So of those hives, I'm going to split them in half, and again, so I'm going to try and keep some real good data. Each one of them will be probably about a 75 hive test, if you will. So we'll see how all that comes, and of course that's providing everything goes good. But next year I'm gonna try and focus a little less on growth and more on honey production. So,
Good. Well, thanks for all that. Doug, what's going on with you? You things kind of slowing down now? You got the extraction done, and
Yeah, time to feed and start treating bees. That's about the biggest thing on the agenda right now. Made all my creamed honey, so that's slowed down right now too. This year, when you were talking about production and stuff this year, we kind of got caught with our pants down. We control our swarming by making nukes earlier on, which we were doing. Early June, we put a couple of honey supers on to give them room. And in about the middle of June, I went to rob a bit of brood from one of the honey super, or from one of the units out in the yard. And the two honey supers were already full. This year we had an unusual amount of sweet clover. Like any place that wasn't worked, we had clover growing, and they had things plugged out before the end of June with clover. We were looking what we thought would be an above average year, but we were dry here. Our canola honey production wasn't what it normally is, so we wound up with about an average year in this part of the country, all told.
So that early sweet clover kind of saved the day.
Oh yeah, it made quite a difference. I think Ian probably found that out too. Like we're on about the same parallel as him. So
I was down there earlier in the season, and the sweet clover was, oh my goodness, I'd never seen sweet clover like that. I wish I had that here. That's kind of my main forage.
I think that whole ditch was all sweet clover.
It was as tall as a truck almost.
It was something else.
Just crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way it was here. Anything that hadn't been worked, there was clover growing. When they mowed the ditches along the highway, they cut all the clover down. It come right back and a second growth of clover. So.
Yeah. Yes, it does. Sweet clover is, to me, that's the pinnacle of honey as far as my wildflower forage goes.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, Doug, I'm still seeing a little bit of an odd thing up here too. So, I was out there on the weekend, and of course, I still been feeding the pollen patties and stuff to the bees, and I'd lift the lid off and couldn't figure out they hadn't touched the pollen patties, and I'm thinking, oh no, did the brood and everything kind of stop in there? Go around to the front of the hive, and they're hauling this bright yellow pollen in by the bucket loads. And so when I did start digging in there, it actually is going the opposite direction. I'm a little bit concerned that they're going to plug themselves out with pollen and not give themselves enough of that sugar water for the winter. That's the first time I've seen that issue. Usually they balance it out pretty good, but they're hauling it in just by the buckets, right? And I don't know where they're getting it. We don't have the sweet clover. We don't have a whole bunch of goldenrod. I did take a little bit of a drive around the countryside, and I haven't got the clue where they're getting this stuff from.
Last year we had goldenrod till it was coming out of the hive, running out of the hive almost. This year there isn't any.
So maybe that's what we're seeing up here, but I don't see the goldenrod. Usually you'll see that along the ditches and in the edge of the fields and stuff. And it's not there, so I'm not sure where they're getting it, but they sure are finding it.
Yeah. We've got 1 yard knocked back. What we're trying to do is winter on a single hive instead of doubles. Like we winter outside. So we've got them in styrofoam, and we're going to see how that works out. I've modified Brad's pellet to accept the wider styrofoam hives to see how that'll work for us too.
Excellent.
Nice.
Oh,
So Alex, you want to chime in here about your season?
Oh, sure. Well, I mirrored James a lot, except on a much smaller scale. Like I can't. I realize I can't go beyond 30 hives for now, and I need to focus on monetizing my bees more. I got my mixer, and I'm like I have a quarter kilograms left, so I'm expanding the seed honey right now. I'm not making any new flavored honeys, but I got some pings, like people like the like one woman that works where I do said she's pacing herself not to eat the cinnamon honey too fast. So yeah, I prepared the mixer today, cleaned it up, removed it from the box, cleaned it up, and I grew the seed. I increased the quantity so I can then take my old honey from last year. I still have one pail left, and turn that into more creamed honey. And as for this year, my harvest is going to look at something like 1,200 pounds.
Nice. Turn that into some creamed honey. I'm going to introduce Norman here in a minute.
But yeah, 1,200 pounds. If I can sell it as cinnamon honey, that's going to bring. It's going to get me closer to actually getting a truck.
You betcha. That's awesome. That's so nice to hear. That is so nice to hear.
I just something I thought about today is maybe like give an incentive, like a referral program, like one free jar of honey if you bring a person that's never bought something before.
Yeah, I've got a little bit of advice on that. That kind of stuff is fun to do and it can be effective. However, don't lead with that in your business model because
could limit that to one or two referrals, or I think
I don't know.
You'd be better off to leave your price where it is, and if you're going to do something like that, maybe offer that if you wanted to do that, Alex, something that would help you better off in your bottom line would be 10% off or 15% off your first purchase.
Okay.
Even at that though, you've got a superior product to what's going to be there in the stores, and you don't have to discount that, and you have to remember it's not going to go bad.
Yeah, that's my advice, Alex. Certainly and this is just my advice. You do whatever you want.
I'm really glad for this. Sorry,
but my advice is because you're just developing a brand new business model for yourself, right? You have something to start with, and you need to test the waters, and you need to find out who your customer is, because you've got a specific customer. Not every customer is your customer. You get to choose, and I would say don't lead off with discounting your product.
Okay.
My product is never on sale. Right now, I may do ad hoc, give somebody a jar of honey because I like them or they did something nice for me or something, right? So that's just my advice there, because I think your product is going to sell itself. I don't think you're going to have to try to sell the product. You're just going to have to find avenues to meet those customers.
That's my weak point. Bees, I'm surprised at how fast I picked it up, but interacting with people, that's my...
Once you take that product, and once they get into that product, you're not going to have any choice, and then you're going to have a problem I can't produce it fast enough. Right?
Yeah, because you have word of mouth, right? I took a marketing course, and the
Well,
one
let
thing.
me let me introduce Norm. Let me hold that thought. Let me just introduce you. Um, Norman's not a beekeeper,
No,
not yet, anyway.
not yet.
Okay, Norman and I met in 1996 because we took an IT course together, and we met. And Norman, I've been thinking about this, and I've not known you in person for
No.
more than a couple of months. I
Yes,
knew you for weeks,
right. Yeah.
and we've kept in touch for what is it, 25
30,
years, 30.
35. Yeah.
Well, yeah, 25 to 30.
I think we
And
both have
and
Scottish heritage, so
well, we do. I think we're related way back, but that's debatable. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there. Norman's down near Chicago.
Oh.
So anyway, he's a brilliant guy,
Yeah.
and he's salt of the earth. So that's what I wanted to say.
And
So go ahead with your thought, Norm.
I see we have Glenn here. Hi, Glenn, Kentucky.
Glenn, Kentucky.
Hey, how are
beekeeper.
you?
Good.
I enjoy watching you guys, listening to you.
I love that accent.
Well, thanks.
Hey, guys, like, I don't want to steal the show, but I've got like a 1 minute blurb I'd like to share with y'all when you say.
Floor is yours, my friend.
Really? Okay, here we go. So I worked in cancer research down here in the University of Chicago. Huge operation, worked with a world-leading researcher on it, and found out that we were dealing with kids dying from cancer, right? My boss he did surgery on these kids, gave them chemo. They give these kids the most toxic poison known to man, and the odds are that they die. Well, me being, like Brad said, smart, I researched the hell out of it, and I found out a cure that doesn't require pharmaceuticals using electromagnetic pulsed waves. And I had compiled so much evidence that the professor, world renowned, told me, he said, Norm, you have all the evidence. So I tried to encourage the university to implement this or research it. And they just looked at me because they got all their funding from pharmaceuticals. Today's news, they're spending $850 million for a new research center. And I got all the research on a free cure for this. And in this chat, this is what I want to share. In this chat, I did a quick Google search and found all sorts of scientific articles about pulsed electromagnetic waves with bees to cure nosema. And there's some evidence. I'd be very interested in, maybe I'll do once I finally get some bees.
Send me some stuff, and I can throw that on my channel or something, Norm.
Yeah, the reaction you got, Norm, does not surprise me. There's no money in cures; it's in treatments. There's money.
Yeah.
But I want to keep it bees.
$600,000 to treat your kid, and they'll give the parents a free parking pass.
Yeah, well, I do want to keep it bees, though.
Right.
Thanks. And I've talked to Norm about this, and he is a really smart guy. He's like 100 times smarter than I am. Which,
well, I think it translates to bees, though. That's what I'm saying.
But it just makes him average. He's 100 times smarter than I am, so he's just average. So if he says there's something to this, then there's something to it. So he's got my email address. So send me whatever research information you can dig up on that. That would be fantastic, Norm.
But yeah,
because that's one of the biggest scourges we have.
If that stuff works on nosema,
yeah,
that would be awesome. And it just like eats a bit of electricity instead of chemicals.
Todd would love it. We could just EMP all of California and everything would be cancer free and they'd be admitted in. He's not there, so I know he's listening though. He'll be back.
So
Sure, the
Glenn,
bees kill the
tell us a
good.
little bit about yourself and your bees and whatnot. I don't know you, so floor is yours.
I've been a beekeeper for about 3-4 years now. Started out with a couple hives. My dad was a beekeeper all his life. My grandfather was a beekeeper all of his life. Small, 10 to 15, sometimes maybe 20 hives. And seemed like every winter I would lose hives. I would start out with 2, and I was just learning, and I would watch videos, watch some of you guys, and Ian on here, and Bob Beanie, and so last year I had a bunch of health issues, and I just had 1 hive. So this spring, some of my health issues were better, and I came home one day and I had a swarm. So I'll catch the swarm. So I caught the swarm, and a couple of days later, I had another swarm and another swarm. So I ended up catching 4 swarms from 1 hive. And then I thought, well, I want to try some splits. So I went through, got the fresh eggs after watching all your videos and learning stuff of the young larvae, and so I would transfer them over into a queen castle I had built, and I started 7 additional nukes, and then that was the 1st of June, and then I thought, well, August, people say it's kind of too late, but I'm in southeastern Kentucky. It's still a good flow going, so it started slowing down in August, so I started in August. I said, well, I'm going to make 5 more. My nuke boxes are empty. I'm going to make 5 more just for learning to see if I can do it. So I made 5 other splits, and they're all doing good. Some of them I've actually had to put into 10 frame boxes already. My first swarms, I've kept them and just let them fill their boxes out. But I was still able to harvest about 7 gallons of honey, which is enough for me and my family, and I sold some of it. But it's been a really good year for me here, and I actually had a swarm the day after Labor Day, which I thought was strange this late up in the year. In Kentucky, I don't know of anybody that has swarms that late,
Yeah.
but they probably won't make it. I may have to combine them, but it's been an interesting year for me. I've learned a lot and took chances, trying new things, and marked my queens. I never had done that before. That was kind of
Stressful, isn't it?
yeah.
Are you using any gadgets to mark, or you just doing the old Bob Binney, pick them up and?
Well, I tried the Bob Binney at first, and I was shaking like a leaf on a tree. And I picked it up, and I was holding the queen, and I was shaking just like I don't know, shaking horribly. And I got her marked, and just knew, I didn't even know at the time that a queen normally wouldn't sting you. So, and I was afraid of hurting her also, so I threw her back down on the box real quick, and I was like, I shouldn't have done that. I should have laid her down easy. But she was fine, and she's done great. And then I thought,
Well,
there's
good
got to
for
be a
you.
better way. So I bought me a queen, what they call the one-handed queen catcher.
Oh yeah.
And I use that to mark them. And then I've also started, a friend of mine, his wife was interested in them, and I introduced her to my bees, and actually caught a small swarm last month that came at their house. And I took a box over for them with some frames and put the swarm in there for them and got it set up for them. And so I've kind of helped get them started with their first one.
So now
it's
you're
been
a beekeeping mentor.
It's been a great year for me. It really has.
Good.
God's blessed
Boy,
me.
that's good to hear. That's really good to hear.
Glenn, if you're ever out there, so I used to use one of those one-handed queen catchers too. And I know a
Queen
lot of
guillotine.
I saw this coming.
I was gonna say, I know. Well, a lot of people do. I've moved away from it. I've got a couple of them, and I've moved away from them. I've actually, I've got it's like a little wooden circle with a bunch of pins around it with a screen in it, where I can just set that little queen cage right on top, press it down slightly into the wax or the the drawn comb, and you can dig it out, lift it back up, and lift it away and let her walk away. I found it's way, like, I'm going to say probably 10 times quicker. And occasionally when I tried to catch them in that one hand catcher, and it could be just the way I was using it, but I found I killed more queens using the one hand catcher than now I just take that thing, poke it on, grab it up, and and it's a dab, and the marker goes back in, and just.
I'm still waiting for James to send me one of those in the mail.
use the same thing.
Yeah, I've seen those, and I thought, well, I've got some 1/8 inch hardware cloth. I might just build me one. But then I said, well, I'll try this. But after you use the one-handed queen catcher a few times, they get dirty from being in your bee stuff, and it's kind of hard to see that you're not getting the queen's legs when you're sliding the little screen over to capture her. And so it's kind of tricky. You have to really be patient, and it takes a minute to do it.
That little cage, look into it. I think you'll quite enjoy that. I've got two of them that I keep in the truck. One always seems to be in my pocket. Put it the nail pointy side out though, because when you pick up
that's experience speaking.
Yeah, and you hit it against your leg. Guess you got the little tattoo.
Yeah. So do you get it on Amazon or what?
You can get them off of Amazon. Yeah, I was trying to convince.
What are they called, so I can look
This
it up?
guy put it on his webpage, because I try to share things like that when I find that they work really well, and
that
we
really
should
works well. We should. I mean, I'd love to try it. I think I'll get one. I've marked hundreds of queens with the one-handed. I've killed one, and it was just this year too, which is crazy. I think I was probably getting a little complacent, and everything was fine. And I guess I got complacent when I opened the thing to let her go, and I wasn't careful. I wasn't watching, and I caught her in the thing, and I killed her. But I literally marked hundreds of queens and never. It actually it damaged her abdomen. There's juice come shooting out of her abdomen. So that was the end.
You got to be real careful.
Nice queen.
The one I have, you have to. The cylinder will just slide up so far, and then you have to like manually push it really hard in order for it to hold the queen. And it's I don't like that. It's like
Is yours yellow or kind of a bluish?
yellow.
That's why.
Oh, okay, yeah. The Man Lake
blue
one, is better. So I'll
The
just
blue
say
one?
that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
What's the name?
it's twice as much money, but the yellow one is kind of crappy.
Yeah,
What's the name of the
it's
device, James, the circular device to mark the queens, so I can look it up?
I'll send it to. Let me see if I can find it here. I'm on my iPad, so I can't put in the link here, but I did send it to you, Bob. Are you able to share something and bring that up, or do you remember where it was?
Yeah, if you like that yellow one, Glenn, and just the shortcomings of it, put the money out and order the Man Lake one.
Yeah,
that's what I'll have to do. That or do the screen he was telling me about, the little like a
How to
dial.
get that little screen? Just for
Now
the,
the screen on that little circle is actually thread.
No, mine's metal.
Oh, really? The one I've seen is like hand sewn type of thing.
Oh yeah, no, mine is. It's not 1/8. It's a little bit bigger than 1/8. I don't know if it's.
It would be.
And it's big enough that if you try to mark a real small version with it, she'll crawl up through the screen. Over. So I mean, it works good, especially. Just
it helped me as a beginner still learning beekeeper, it really helped me to spot the queen. I can find the queens easier once I've marked them. Even if I don't have one marked, it's still easier for me to spot them because I've learned what to look for quicker, and I can spot them like in a swarm that I've caught, and I could go through it and find the queen. And I usually go ahead and mark her as soon as I can. That way, if I'm going through my frames, I can see her, and I know where she's at, and I don't squash her
I was
or
probably a
hurt her.
beekeeper for 5 years at least before I ever marked queens, and I had received marked queens from some places. I bought them, here and
Yeah.
there, and I knew how nice it was to have the queens marked, but I never
Oh,
did. And then I think the one-handed queen catcher, I really fell in love with it because I bought it and I started marking queens, and it was so easy.
yeah.
And I never killed a queen for years. Only killed that one just this year. So I think it kind of was my gateway drug kind of thing. It that little tool really changed my life as far
You
as
Actually,
beekeeping goes.
watching your videos, it looks like you never harmed a bee using that.
Yeah, I haven't just one, like just that one queen. I was so disappointed because I was just, I don't know, in a hurry or something, and a big, beautiful yellow queen too, and I killed the poor girl.
you've modified it too, though, Brad. You make that little piece that goes in underneath the
Well,
gate.
a little, and I think that was mostly because I was trying to use it with gloves on at the beginning, because I was still wearing gloves then. And what I had done is the little door where you push with your thumb, I had pressed a little too hard and I damaged it because there was nothing behind it to back up
Yeah.
that door. It was just flexible. So I take it apart and I'll cut a little piece of, I don't even want what is that material? Is it nylon or PVC or something? It's like a piece of wood, but it's plastic, and I'll just mill that to right shape and size so it fits in there, and then the door has something to slide on, so you can press
Yeah.
it as hard as you want on the door. You're not going to damage it. So that's the little. I did a video on making those and putting them in one time. So if you want
I've
to
got
see
a
that,
question. Doug and Charlie, do you guys mark your bees? And if so, how?
Yeah.
Well,
I use
Go
I use
ahead,
the
Doug.
same ring that James does.
okay, yeah,
I use the one-handed queen catcher thing, but I pick her off the comb with a queen clip, and then I transfer her to a one-handed machine because a lot of guys around here, yeah, they call that the guillotine. That's a
Yeah.
lot of time.
Yeah.
She'll go up and try to get her head up through there, and they'll want to open her up, open that thing open, and it'll cut her head right off.
yeah, and and I don't know about the yellow one. I've never actually seen one, but I know a lot of people have bought them, and they say that there's a lot of problems with them. The Man Lake one, the plunger rotates a little bit, and when you pull it back and you rotate it, it locks in the open position. So then when you set the queen catcher on the comb, the plunger's not going to fall. Right, the thing
Yeah.
is open,
Yeah.
so queens. I've noticed when they're in a cage or something, they always want to go up, right? So if you turn that thing
Yeah.
over, pull that plunger up, lock it, turn it over, she'll typically want to go up, and you can watch through the thing and when you open the door, and that's probably the most dangerous part is just opening and certainly closing the door. But again, when you're picking the queen up and you put that thing over top of the queen, you just have to make sure you don't squash her putting it, make sure you got her in the center. She
Yeah.
climbs right up in there right away. Like you've seen it. And so you can see that big queen kind of going up in there, and you can then slide the door. I typically have gotten practice so I don't slide the door completely closed, because there's going to be a worker in it or something, but I'll slide it closed enough that the queen can't get out, and then I'll tip it over and then scoot the workers aside and get the thing closed. I like picking them up for a lot of reasons. If I'm making splits or if I'm working with somebody else, maybe I'm working with my wife and I'll sit her down and say, find this queen for me. I can't find. She'll sit down there and find the queen. And then she'll get her queen catcher and she'll pick her up and set her on the hive. And then I can, the queen isn't in there. I can do whatever I want with that hive at that point. So,
Right.
To me, it's certainly more than marking.
My virgins that come out of the incubator, I just pick them up. I let them crawl up, and I pick them up, and I'll mark them, and then put them into the cage. So that's the
that's the easiest way because they don't fly; they just kind of crawl around.
Yeah. And
Do you pick them up with the wings or the abdomen?
Oh no, I just let them put my hand down there. They'll
Oh
walk.
yeah. Okay.
They crawl on your hand. I try to get them to crawl up my index finger, and I just kind of grab the 3 legs on one side with my thumb, and then I can just easily mark the virgin, and then I've got her there, and I've got a JZBZ cage. I just kind of stuff her in a JZBZ cage from there.
I'm watching some of the comments here, so where they're saying if you mark your bees early in the spring. I've never had that. So yes, I've seen that. If I take her out and I put her back in, I've seen that happen. I've never had a single issue with that with the little press-in cage because you've got workers in there, whether 9 times out of 10 at the same time. So you literally dab her and you lift it back up. And I'm going to say 99% of the time, she will walk right over and, carry on. Like it's almost like nothing has even happened. And the other thing that I saw in there is something to do with the pens. So I switched 2 years ago to the competitive advantage pens. And I swear by those pens now. I mean, no issues. The paint doesn't come off. I haven't seen any issues at all with them. Like she literally walks away, and I don't. 9 times out of 10, I don't even wait for the paint to dry. So I went to that little cage for saving myself those extra few minutes to catch her, let it, put it back down. I literally will find it. I will lay the frame down, grab the cage, put it in, mark it, put it away, drop the frame back in, and I'm off to the next one. It's literally
competitive advantage pens can be found at Bewares, bewares.com. That's Bewares for all your beekeeping needs.
So
back to the show.
Yeah, they really are.
Product placement.
I swear by them. So
I'm out. Okay.
Fresca.
So if you haven't seen it,
drinking the Fresca straight tonight.
They look like this.
Yeah, they're very effective. I really like them.
Uh-oh.
James just blew his camera.
Holy cow.
I felt a sneeze attack coming on.
Too much.
There's a bit of lung on the camera.
Yeah,
a bit of lung.
I went to hit the mute button and ended up.
I thought he sneezed so hard his internet went out.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing I learned this year. The cell phone service and Wi-Fi service around here sucks.
You should be where we are, James. We're right close to the Manitoba-Saskatchewan border. Saskatchewan can't transmit into Manitoba. Manitoba can't transmit into Saskatchewan. So we're in no man's land.
Oh, wow. Crazy, eh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Jeremy asked, were you allergic to BS?
Nope.
He wouldn't be able to come on the stream. At least my stream.
You'd have to take
I'm not going to touch that one, James.
You'd have to take the EpiPen before he got on. He'd take a shot from the EpiPen and jump online.
But
Let me ask you guys, how far is a good distance to keep a secondary bee yard? What's a good range?
There's a loaded
that's a good question. That has a lot to do with a lot. How many bees in each bee yard? What's the forage like? Do you have access to that space? Usually I've got my bee yard location is governed by the fact that I can actually use somebody's yard. I typically run 2 yards and they're only what is it, 3 miles? 3 miles apart. So they overlap, like the forage area overlap
Yeah.
by, a good half a mile. I don't know if there's any hard and fast rules.
I don't think there is. I remember reading a study once. Now the study I think was fairly old, but they were trying to figure out how many colonies of bees. And in this study, it was like, once again, it's quite old. But trying to figure out how many colonies of bees could be supported by a 1 mile by 1 mile square plot of land. And they went through saying, this much was percentage of trees, this much was percentage of wildflower, this much percentage. And they got to, I think they said they got to 3,000 hives and they saw no difference. No. You got to take a look at what they had there for forage, right? But
yeah.
If
I'd say one of your considerations is, are you going to use your out yard for moving your bees? If you're going to make a split and you're going to say, I'm going to move those to my out yard so they don't fly home again. Well, your out yard better be 3 miles away or more, right?
Exactly.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's more
kind of
practicality as far, and again, a lot of times things come down to me as the beekeeper, not necessarily has anything to do with the bees, right?
Mine's set up for what I have for equipment. So I set mine up for 40 hives per apiary. That's what my equipment is set for. I have the unfortunate part is I have 3 apiaries this year. I'll probably have 6 next year, and unfortunately, they're about a 15-20 minute drive between them. So not the best for gas mileage, but next year I've set it all up so that it'll actually be in a row. So now all 6 or all 8 apiaries will be all in a row. The furthest one apart on both ends will be 20 minutes from one end to the other. So,
Yeah, and Jeremy makes a really good point there that if you're raising queens and you want to use your out yard as a drone producing yard as well, now you want to maybe make sure they're a little closer together. Maybe you don't want them more than 2 or 3 miles apart.
Yeah. I was wanting to try to stay in 3 miles. From what I'd researched, I felt that might be a good distance if I could find a local farmer. 'Cause where I'm at, it's woods, pasture land, hay crops, mixture of wildflowers, clover, just a wide variety of different stuff. And bees, I think I would like to get up to maybe 40. I don't know that how much I can do. So I do it all myself and work full time too, and try to build most of my hives myself and my lids. And
sounds familiar.
Yeah, there's an echo in here, I think. I don't know. I've heard that a couple times before.
Yeah, I'm in a very similar situation. I'm at 30, and I think I'm at my limit right now.
Yeah. Glenn, you inspire me because I don't own any bees yet, and I'm like this close to getting my first hive or 2. So
you need to go ahead and get your first hive.
That's what everyone says, and I don't believe them. It seems like way too much work.
And next year you'll have
no, it is work, but it's kind of like farming. You got to enjoy it because you're not going to get rich. Some people may get richer, wealthier, make more profit on it.
That's only the people who sell equipment.
It's the amazement. To me, what's amazing is God made this honeybee that is so much smarter than man and can do things that mankind cannot do, scientists cannot do.
And that's the intrigue of these bugs, isn't it? That if you really get into what they're doing,
mind blowing,
just incredible.
So Norm, it's a catch-22.
It is,
because you can get 1 hive, but there's so many benefits to having 2. And if you got 2, twice as many benefits if you have 4. And then if you got 4, you don't want it to swarm, so you're going to split. But now you got 8.
Actually,
Yep.
James, I picked that up from this chat today. I was thinking about getting one, and somebody mentioned they started out with two, and like a light bulb went off in my head, and it's like, hey, that may
Yeah.
make sense. Yeah.
Definitely two. Definitely
Yeah.
don't get one. Definitely two.
Well,
Because
I
it
have-
allows you to get a baseline to compare.
I was going to say,
Well,
if you want to work
a lot
at
of things, yeah.
it, 3 years ago, I started with 15 hives. So you want to work at it, you can grow them pretty quick.
You can. I've grew from one hive. Well, I inherited one hive when my dad passed away. I got one of his hives to just kind of keep that stock going, but all from one hive, and now I've got 17, 11 well established and in singles, and 3 of them are in deeps, and 3 others have one super on them. But I've got 17 now, and that's just from this year. So it's if you work at it and enjoy it, it's not work when you enjoy it.
I got a picture just while we're on the chat here. So the bee stealer met its match at the apiary, one of my apiaries there tonight. So Alan just sent a picture of the skunk that didn't quite make it out of the apiary tonight.
That's good.
The one thing you have to watch when you're expanding, you can expand the bee end really fast, really quick. It's the other end where this honey is going to go and be extracted. You have to be set up there to handle the load.
Absolutely. That's something
Yeah.
And the feed.
I've got a friend in New Brunswick, and she extracts the honey with a hand-powered extractor. And I told her about Brad's electric one, and that he tested, and she's fine with a hand-powered one, but that woman is a hard-working person, you know.
I should be a spokesperson for the 12-frame Lyson extractor. Because man, I have put that thing to work this year.
Well, it is almost like you're getting paid.
You have to be getting paid because there's no way in hell I would do that much honey with that extractor. I'm just saying.
And it's no point for me to say get a 60-year-old Walter T. Kelly 33 frame extractor. The extractor for you.
I'd take it.
Sure you would.
Actually,
I love that old beast. It just chugs away.
Especially after how that 1973 uncapper turned out, man. That thing's better than new, man.
That old Kelly extractor, you know, it is stone axe reliable and simple as can be. You can see every piece. Well, it can rip your arm off if you're not careful too. But you know, you just got to make sure you put your fingers in the right places and and stuff. So, it's a good old 3-speed transmission, and just don't stick your fingers in there.
The thing I really notice, Brad, is you leave your honey extracting for a day or 2 or 3. If I did that, we'd have to chisel it out.
I know. Hey, Doug, that reminds me. I want to bounce something off you. I was going to bounce it off Ian. I'll do it later. So, and that's this canola again, right? So,
yeah.
I have a distinct lack of canola in my area, and I'm thankful for that because many reasons. And one of them is it's the 20th of September, and I'm still extracting. However, there does from time to time appear a canola field not that far away. And there was one like half a mile east of my yard this year. And I'm still extracting liquid honey today. So here's what I'm thinking. I've heard multiple beekeepers say the same old line: bees will fly over a canola field to get to a clover field. Now, if that's true, I wonder if the clover is protecting me from the canola. What do you think of that statement?
I'm thinking you're getting enough clover mixed with the canola to keep it.
That's what I was going to say too. Yeah, enough of the canola to keep it. You're blending it out inside the hive.
Yeah.
I think that's a very distinct possibility. But a canola flow is so heavy. It's so heavy that it's got to come in there and be pure canola in one or two of my boxes or something, you'd think. Do you think they're getting distracted by clover?
I
Because
think
there's
next year let's do a test next year. Let's set half of your boxes aside for a month.
I was going to say put GPS on your bees.
I'll send you a chisel.
I think they've got to be into it. Bees are attracted to yellow like crazy, so I'm sure you're getting canola.
It sure doesn't taste like it, and it doesn't granulate like it either.
Yeah.
You might have enough forage right close by, though. They might not be getting to that field, Brad. I've been out to your place. There's a pile of forage right close by, so
it's all hayfield.
I mean, they might not be getting to that canola field. That's
It's
possible.
all hayfield and marsh. There was beans just a quarter mile south too.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Do you get much off beans, Doug?
No, not a lot off the beans.
And they're late too, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I don't think
Brad
I've gotten much off
had a
beans.
coronary because I bought some local honey, and he asked me, "Well, where do they get the nectar from?" And I told him goldenrod, and he about fell out of his chair.
And you're going to eat that crap?
Yeah, Norm, you need to get the bees. Then you can have some real honey.
I
Yeah.
actually like goldenrod honey. Well, cream goldenrod honey. It's pretty good.
My dad had some honey one year off of autumnally trees. I don't know if you all have those trees in your areas or not. They're an invasive tree. They planted them on these old strip mines where they mine coal, and they grow rapid, fast, bushy, and the honey was clear as water. And to me, it had kind of a soured, tart taste to it, and I wouldn't eat it. I hated it. But some coworkers that I worked with, I let them try it, and they loved it. But that was the first honey I'd ever saw from those autumn olive trees.
Autumn olive. I'm looking at the timer here, and we're over 2.5 hours into this, so I think we should let some of the home audience get some sleep. And I'm going to thank everybody for showing up to not my first live stream. I did one in February, and but always leave them wanting more, right? You don't want to do them too often. But I'm glad Bob does, because I get to hang out on Bob's channel.
Right there. No, I'm just kidding.
So Bob's channel, Walker Bee Ranch, has live stream most nights. But what's your official night, Bob? Is it
Tuesday nights are our official night where Lee from Kodiak Farms and I alternate Tuesdays.
Right.
So
But there's no night Monday too.
There's no Mike Monday, and Thursdays we do a live, and Saturday.
But
And
you
then
can have Walker Bee Ranch almost every
Friday.
night, and then
Friday.
Charlie,
Yep.
Sawmill Charlie. Sawmill Charlie is Friday Night Charlie, so make sure you're there tomorrow night. And I'm usually hanging around.
And I was going to say, I just crash them when I can. And I've just about got the feeding done. I've just about got the treatments done. And I've just about got all the honey spun. So I'll be crashing them more often.
Right
You
on.
need the warning flash there now.
Look forward to
Warning.
it.
Warning.
Okay, well, thanks everybody. I'm going to end the live stream, and I really appreciate you showing up. I hope you all had a good
Thank
time.
you.
And as always, take care and have fun.
Good night, everyone.
Yeah, everybody.
Hey.
Good night. God bless.
God bless, bud.